Power demands sacrifice. Love demands everything. Alpha King Rowan Vale stood in that arena with the woman who bled for him, fought beside him, saved his worthless life when rebellion nearly tore his throat open. The elders gave him a choice: keep Selene Ashford and lose the throne forever, or abandon her and rule an empire. He chose the crown. He let her hand slip from his while thousands watched. That single moment shattered more than hearts. It cracked the foundation of an entire kingdom. You want to see how badly one decision can destroy everything a man thinks he's built? Stay until the end. Hit that like. Drop your city in the comments. Let's watch this empire burn together. The night wind cut through the royal arena like a blade seeking bone. Rowan Vale could taste copper in his mouth, though no one had struck him yet. Above, the crimson moon hung fat and bloated, painting everything below in shades of dried blood. Fitting. Everything about this ceremony felt like death wearing ceremony clothes. Beside him, Selene Ashford stood with her spine straight as a sword. Her hand rested in his, warm and calloused from years of combat training. Those fingers had pulled him from rubble during the Southern Rebellion, had staunched the wound in his side while enemy wolves circled, had never once trembled when facing down threats that made seasoned warriors piss themselves. Now those same fingers felt like they were burning through his palm. 10,000 wolves packed the stone tiers surrounding them. The ancient arena had hosted coronations for 3 centuries, but tonight it felt more like an execution ground. Torches blazed along the walls, throwing savage shadows across faces hungry for spectacle. They'd come to see their next king crowned. They'd come to witness destiny. They had no idea they were about to watch something far uglier. Elder Matthias stood at the center of the ceremonial platform, his white robes pristine against the blood-stained stone beneath his feet. 6 other elders flanked him in a semicircle, their expressions carved from the same ancient stone as the arena itself. These were the men who controlled the empire's throat, the ones who decided which bloodlines rose and which ended screaming in the dark. Rowan had known them his entire life, had feared them longer than that. Matthias raised one gnarled hand and the crowd's roar died like something strangled. The silence that followed pressed down with the weight of centuries. When the old man spoke, his voice carried to every corner without effort, a trick of acoustics the builders had engineered specifically for moments like this. Rowan Vale, son of Marcus, heir to the northern bloodline. You stand before this council and before your people to claim what your father's death left vacant: the throne, the crown, the absolute rule of all Alpha territories from the frozen shores to the burning sands. Rowan felt his jaw clench. His father's death. As if Marcus Vale had simply stopped breathing one night instead of being found with his throat opened ear to ear in his own bedchamber. The council had called it an assassination by Southern rebels. Convenient, neat, absolute horseshit. You have proven yourself in combat, Matthias continued, his eyes dead as winter stones. You have led armies. You have secured our borders. You have done everything required of a king. The pause stretched. Rowan knew what came next. They'd warned him 3 days ago in a private chamber that stank of old incense and older schemes. Everything except one thing. Selene's hand tightened in his. She knew too. They'd told her separately, making sure she understood the terms before this public spectacle. The throne demands purity of purpose, singular devotion. A king cannot serve 2 masters. He cannot divide his loyalty between empire and individual desire. Matthias's gaze shifted to Selene like a blade finding its target. Selene Ashford has fought bravely. She has shed blood for this kingdom, but she is not of royal lineage. She carries no ancient bloodline. She brings no alliance, no territory, no strategic value to the throne. Rowan felt something dark and violent surge through his chest. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, wanting to tear out across the arena floor and rip that ancient throat open. But he held still, held silent. Because he'd known this was coming and had spent 3 days trying to find a way around it that didn't exist. The council's law is absolute, Matthias said. You may take the throne and rule as supreme king of all alphas, or you may bind yourself to this woman and forfeit your crown forever. You cannot have both. The crowd erupted. Some shouted support for Rowan. Others screamed for Selene. Most just roared with the mindless blood hunger of a pack sensing imminent violence. They didn't care about love or law or anything except the spectacle of watching someone bleed. Rowan turned to look at Celine. Really, look at her. The torchlight caught the silver pendant at her throat, the one he'd given her after the first night they'd spent together. A crescent moon on a thin chain. She'd worn it every day since, even into battle. Especially into battle. Her green eyes met his without flinching. No tears, no pleading. She'd never begged for anything in her life and wasn't about to start now. "Tell me what you're thinking," she said. Her voice pitched low enough that only he could hear beneath the crowd's noise. "I'm thinking this whole thing is a setup, that they waited until tonight specifically so I'd have to choose in front of everyone. Smart wolves, those elders." She almost smiled. Almost. "So what's it going to be, Your Majesty?" The title landed like a fist. She only called him that when she was pissed or hurt or both. "Celine, don't." She cut him off. "Don't do the speech. Don't tell me what you wish you could do if circumstances were different. I know you, Rowan. I know how you think. You've been calculating the angles since they first dropped this ultimatum 3 days ago." He wanted to argue but couldn't. She was right. He had been calculating, running through scenarios, looking for loopholes in ancient law that men far smarter than him had spent centuries closing. "The Empire needs a king," he said. "The Empire's got a dozen alphas who could wear that crown. Not like me." "No." Her jaw set. "Not like you. Because you actually give a damn about something other than power. Or at least I thought you did." That stung worse than any blade. Rowan felt his wolf snarl inside him, felt his fingers start to shift before he caught himself. Around them, the crowd's roar built to a fever pitch. They could smell the tension, taste the coming disaster. Elder Matthias raised his hand again and silence crashed down. "Rowan Vale. The moon reaches its apex. Tradition demands your answer before it passes. Will you take the throne, or will you take the woman?" Everything in Rowan screamed to reach for Celine, to pull her close and tell the council and their ancient laws to rot in the deepest hell. But he could see the bigger picture they'd painted for him in that private chamber 3 days ago. Without a strong king, the territories would fracture. The border clans already pushed against their boundaries. The trade routes ran thick with bandits. Rival packs sensed weakness and circled like sharks. His father had held it together through sheer brutal force. But Marcus was dead, murdered. And if Rowan walked away now, the next king would be chosen by the council itself. They'd install some puppet, some weak-blooded noble they could control completely. The empire would tear itself apart within a year. 10,000 wolves watched. 10,000 lives that would burn if he chose wrong. Celine's hand stayed steady in his. She wasn't going to make this easier, wasn't going to give him permission or absolution. She just stood there, chin up, meeting his eyes with that same fearless stare she'd given him the first time they'd fought side by side. That had been in the southern mountains, enemy wolves pouring through a broken defensive line. His own guard cut down, blood in his eyes and steel in his ribs and death about 6 seconds away. Then she'd been there, some nobody fighter from the border territories. She'd dragged him behind cover, pulled the blade from his side, and held the gap until reinforcements arrived. Afterward, covered in gore and grinning like a maniac, she'd asked if he needed help walking. He'd fallen for her right then. That exact moment, before he even knew her name. Now he could feel that moment slipping away, feel the weight of 10,000 stares and 3 centuries of tradition and his father's ghost and the throne's gravity all pulling him in one direction. Rowan's fingers loosened, just slightly, just enough. Celine felt it. He saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not surprise, not pain, just a kind of tired recognition, like she'd known this was coming from the moment the elders first issued their ultimatum. "Rowan," she started, but he was already letting go, his hand sliding away from hers, the warmth between their palms turning to cold air and emptiness. The crowd erupted into chaos, half cheering, half screaming denial. The sound crashed over the arena like a physical force. Celine stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. Then she took 1 step back, then another. Her face had gone carefully blank, the same expression she wore when taking wounds in combat, when pain hit but couldn't be acknowledged until after the fight ended. Except this fight was over, and he'd just gutted her in front of the entire empire. "Celine," he tried again, reaching for her, but she'd already turned away. Elder Matthias moved forward with the crown. The ancient circlet of black iron and white gold that every Alpha King had worn since the Empire's founding, heavy enough to break a normal man's neck, cold enough to freeze skin in winter. "Kneel," Matthias commanded. Rowan's legs moved automatically. He dropped to one knee on the bloodstained stone, eyes still locked on Celine's retreating back. She walked through the crowd like a ghost. Wolves parted for her. Some reached out, but she shook them off. Her shoulders stayed straight, her spine unbent. The crown settled onto Rowan's head with the weight of a mountain. "Rise, King Rowan Vale, first of your name, ruler of all Alpha territories, protector of the pack, guardian of the ancient laws." Rowan stood. The crown sat like a brand, like molten iron poured directly onto his skull. The crowd's roar shifted, became something else, became acknowledgement, acceptance. They had their king. The law had been satisfied, tradition maintained. Only a few wolves still watched Celine's retreating figure. Only a few noticed when she reached the arena's outer gate and disappeared into the darkness beyond. Rowan noticed. He'd noticed that absence for the rest of his life. Elder Matthias leaned close, his breath sour with age and malice. "You made the right choice, boy. The only choice. Love is temporary. Power is forever." Rowan said nothing, just stood there with the crown's weight crushing down and the crowd's celebration ringing hollow in his ears, and the space where Celine's hand had been burning like an open wound. He'd won the throne. He'd lost everything else. "Attack!" The coronation feast lasted until dawn. Rowan sat at the high table, crown pressing down on his skull, while endless lines of nobles approached to swear their loyalty. Each one knelt. Each one spoke the ancient words. Each one meant absolutely nothing. His beta, Marcus Thorne, stood at his right shoulder, eyes scanning the crowd for threats. Marcus had served his father and now served him. Loyal to the bone. Stupid loyal. The kind of loyalty that got wolves killed when their kings made catastrophically bad decisions. "You're not eating," Marcus observed. "Not hungry." "You need to at least pretend. They're watching." They. Always they. The nobles, the rival clans, the visiting alphas from border territories who'd come to size up the new king and determine if he was worth following or worth challenging. Rowan forced himself to tear into the roasted meat on his plate. It tasted like ash and guilt. Across the hall, musicians played. Wolves danced. Wine flowed in rivers. The celebration should have felt victorious, should have felt like the beginning of something great. Instead, it felt like a wake. "Where's Celine?" someone asked, one of the younger nobles, too drunk to know better. The table went quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Marcus's hand dropped to his blade. "She left. Anyone brings her name up again loses their tongue." The noble paled and stumbled away. Conversation resumed. But the damage was done. Now everyone was thinking about her, about what Rowan had done, about the woman who'd vanished into the night. Rowan stood abruptly. "I need air." "Your Majesty," Marcus started. "That wasn't a request." He walked out before anyone could stop him. Through the great hall, past the guards who snapped to attention, up the winding stairs to the tower that overlooked the capital. The crimson moon had set. Regular moonlight painted the city silver. Rowan could see the arena from here, empty now, just blood-stained stone and cold torches, and the ghost of what he'd done. Celine was out there somewhere, in the city or beyond it, gone. He'd sent runners looking for her immediately after the ceremony. They'd found nothing. She'd disappeared as completely as smoke and wind. No trail, no messages, nothing except the silver moon pendant she'd left on her pillow in the barracks. He'd gone to her quarters himself, found the pendant sitting on the thin military-issue blanket. The chain broken, snapped, like she'd torn it off rather than wasted time with the clasp. That small violence had hurt worse than any of the rest. Rowan pulled the pendant from his pocket now, turned it over in his palm. The metal was still warm from his body heat. He'd been carrying it since the moment he found it, couldn't seem to put it down. "Brooding already?" A woman's voice, sharp and amused. "You've been king for 6 hours." Rowan turned. Elena Cross stood in the doorway, arms folded, one eyebrow raised. His father's former advisor. Now his, apparently, since the council had assigned her without asking his opinion. "Thought I made it clear I wanted to be alone." You made it clear you wanted to run away from a room full of people celebrating your coronation. Not the same thing. She walked to the tower's edge, looking out over the city. Your beta's about to have a stroke. You disappeared without security. Marcus needs to relax. Marcus needs his king to not get assassinated his first night on the throne. Rowan said nothing, just stood there with the pendant in his fist and murder in his heart. Elena studied him with those two sharp eyes. She was older than him by a decade, scars running down one side of her face from some long-ago fight she never discussed. Brutal, efficient, completely without sentiment. You're thinking about her, Elena said. Don't. The girl you threw away for a crown, Celine something. I said don't. Ashford, that was it. Border territory family. No connections. Decent fighter, from what I hear. Saved your life during the rebellion. Elena tilted her head. Must have been good in bed to make you hesitate that long before choosing the throne. Rowan moved. Not consciously, not with any plan, just pure reaction. One moment he was standing by the wall. The next his hand was around Elena's throat, lifting her off the ground, his wolf fully surfaced and snarling. Say her name again, he growled. Give me a reason. Elena didn't struggle, didn't panic, just met his eyes with that same cold calculation. There it is, she wheezed. The rage. Good. You're going to need that. He held her there another heartbeat, then released her. She dropped, caught herself, rubbed her throat. Feel better? She asked. No. Liar. She coughed, then smiled. Sharp. Mean. You want to tear the world apart because you made a choice you can't take back. That's normal. That's human. But you're not human anymore. You're a king. And kings don't get to fall apart over broken hearts. Get out. In a minute. Elena moved back to the tower's edge. The council's meeting tomorrow. They're going to start pushing their agenda. Trade agreements, border disputes, marriage alliances. That last one landed like a blade between his ribs. I'm not. You are. You're king now. That means strategic marriages, producing heirs, strengthening alliances through bloodlines. It's how the empire survives. Rowan felt something crack inside his chest. I've been king for 6 hours, and you'll be reminded of what that means every hour after. Welcome to the throne. Elena headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you made the wrong choice. That girl had spine, the kind you can't fake, the kind that keeps kings honest. She shrugged. But you didn't ask me. You asked the council, and they gave you exactly what you thought you wanted. She left. Rowan stood alone in the tower, crown on his head, pendant in his hand, and a hollow space in his chest where his heart used to be. Below, the city sprawled in moonlight. 1,000,000 lives, 1,000,000 souls depending on the choices he made. The weight of it pressed down harder than the crown ever could. He'd saved the empire. He'd destroyed himself. And somewhere out there, Celine walked alone through the darkness, carrying her own wounds, building her own walls. He told himself this was for the best. Told himself she'd be safer away from the throne's politics and the council's schemes. Told himself she'd find someone else, someone better, someone who wouldn't choose power over love. He told himself a lot of lies that night. None of them helped. 3 months later, the throne still felt like sitting on broken glass. Rowan stood in the council chamber, listening to Elder Matthias drone on about trade disputes with the eastern clans. Around the table, 6 other elders nodded along, their faces carved from ancient disapproval. This was his life now. Endless meetings, endless politics, endless decisions that affected thousands of lives, and none of them mattered because the one person he wanted to share them with was gone. He'd sent scouts looking for Celine, quietly, without telling the council. They'd found nothing. She'd vanished so completely it was like she'd never existed. Sometimes he wondered if he'd imagined her, if she'd been some fever dream his mind invented during the rebellion's chaos. But then he'd touch the pendant still in his pocket and know she'd been real. The pain was too sharp for imagination. Your Majesty? Matthias's voice cutting through his thoughts. Do you agree with the proposed terms? Rowan had no idea what terms they were discussing, hadn't been listening, didn't care. Fine, he said. The elders exchanged glances. Marcus, standing guard by the door, shot him a concerned look. You haven't heard the proposal, another elder said. Elder Catherine, sharp as a blade and twice as cutting. Then tell me again. We're suggesting a marriage alliance with the Western clans. Their alpha has a daughter, strong bloodline, good breeding potential. It would secure our western border and... No. The word came out flat, final. Matthias's expression hardened. Your Majesty, with respect, you cannot rule alone forever. The throne demands heirs. Stability requires... I said no. You gave up the right to make that choice when you took the crown. Matthias stood, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You chose power over personal desire. That means your personal desires no longer matter. You serve the Empire now. The Empire needs heirs. You will marry. You will produce children. You will do what every king before you has done. Rowan felt his wolf surge, felt his control slip. The temperature in the room dropped as his power flooded out, pressing against every wolf present. I am king, he said softly. Not you, me. And I will marry when and who I choose, not before. Are we clear? The elders went very still. This was the first time Rowan had actually pushed back against them. The first time he'd reminded them that beneath the crown and the ceremony, he was still the alpha who'd torn through enemy lines during the rebellion. Still the fighter who'd killed more wolves than most of them had ever met. Still dangerous. As you wish, Matthias said finally. But the question will not disappear simply because you refuse to answer it. The meeting ended. Rowan stalked out, Marcus at his heels. That was unwise, his beta said quietly. Don't care. They're going to push harder now. Make your life difficult. They can try. They reached Rowan's private chambers. He dismissed the guards, locked the door, and poured himself a drink. The whiskey burned. Didn't help. You need to let her go, Marcus said. Rowan's hand tightened on the glass. Don't. I'm serious. You're destroying yourself. She's gone. Moved on. You need to do the same. How do you know she's moved on? Marcus hesitated. That hesitation told Rowan everything. You found her. Rowan, where is she? It doesn't matter. Where? Marcus flinched. North. The mining territories. She's working as a guard. Low profile. Quiet life. Rowan set down his glass carefully. If he didn't, he'd throw it through the window. You've known this how long? 2 weeks. And you didn't tell me. Because I knew you'd do something stupid, like go after her, like throw away everything you chose the throne for. Rowan wanted to hit him, wanted to rage, but Marcus was right. Knowing where Celine was, what she was doing, made everything worse, made the space in his chest ache harder. Is she... He couldn't finish the question. Marcus's expression softened slightly. She's alive, healthy, keeping her head down, that's all I know. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was something. That night Rowan dreamed of the ceremony, of Celine's hand in his, of the moment he let go. But in the dream, he made a different choice. Turned to the council and told them all to burn. Took Celine's hand and walked away from the throne. In the dream, they were happy. He woke with tears on his face and murder in his heart. The crown sat on its stand across the room, catching moonlight. He'd never hated anything more. 6 months. Half a year since he'd become king. Half a year since he'd destroyed the only good thing in his life. The empire was thriving, trade routes secured, border clans brought to heel, new alliances forged, everything a king could want, everything except the one thing that mattered. Rowan sat in the throne room, crown on his head, listening to another petitioner. Some minor noble with a dispute about land rights, the kind of thing that should matter. That would have mattered if he could focus on anything except the hollow space in his chest. Marcus appeared at his shoulder, leaning close. We have a problem. Another one? The Northern Territories, unrest, rebellion talk. Some of the mining clans are refusing to ship their quotas. Rowan straightened. The North, where Celine was. How serious? Serious enough that the council wants you to send troops. Make an example. No. Rowan, us. I said no. Send an envoy. Find out what they actually need instead of just crushing them. Marcus looked at him strangely. That's not how your father handled things. I'm not my father. No, you're not. Marcus studied him. You're thinking about her, about the fact that she's up there. Rowan said nothing, which was answer enough. You can't protect her from here, Marcus said quietly. And you can't go to her. You made your choice. You have to live with it. But that was the problem. Rowan wasn't living. He was existing, going through motions, playing king while his heart rotted inside his chest. That night, alone in his chambers, he pulled out the silver pendant, ran his thumb over the crescent moon, remembered the weight of Celine's hand in his, the way she'd looked at him in the arena, not with hate, not with pleading, just with tired acceptance, like she'd known all along that power would always win. The pendant's chain was still broken, still snapped where she'd torn it off. Rowan had tried a dozen times to have it repaired, had taken it to the finest craftsman in the capital, but every time he started to hand it over, something stopped him. Some irrational belief that fixing the chain would somehow erase what he'd done, would let him pretend the break had never happened, so he carried it as it was. Broken. Ruined. A perfect mirror of everything he'd destroyed. Outside his window, the city sprawled in darkness. Somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the territories he ruled, Celine lived her life without him, worked her guard shifts, slept in some rough barracks, probably never thought about the man who'd abandoned her, probably hated him. Rowan hoped she did. Hate was better than indifference. Hate meant she still felt something. A knock at the door. Elena entered without waiting for permission. The council's scheduled another meeting, she said. Tomorrow. They're pushing the marriage question again. Tell them I'm busy. You can't avoid this forever. Watch me. Elena moved to the window, looking out over the city. You know what's interesting? The northern territories, the ones causing trouble. I did some research. That's where your girl ended up. Rowan went very still. Don't call her that. What should I call her? The woman you threw away, the fighter you betrayed, the... Elena. She turned, smiling that sharp smile. Just making a point. The North's getting restless. People up there remember how she fought during the rebellion. Some of them think you're a coward for choosing the crown over her. They're not wrong. No, they're not. Elena's smile faded. But here's the thing. If the North actually rebels, you'll have to put it down. Can't let that kind of dissent spread. And if you send troops up there... She let the implication hang. If he sent troops, Celine would be in danger, either from the soldiers or from the rebellion itself. She'd fight. That's what she did. And fighters died. I won't let it come to that, Rowan said. Then you better figure out what's actually causing the unrest. Because right now, all we have are rumors and whispers. And those are dangerous. She left. Rowan stood at the window, crown pressing down, pendant in his hand, and a growing dread in his gut. Something was wrong in the North. Something bigger than simple rebellion. And Celine was right in the middle of it. He told himself she could handle it. She'd survived worse. She didn't need him. But the fear wouldn't fade. The same fear he'd felt during the rebellion when he'd lost sight of her in combat. The same terror that had gripped him when he'd thought she was dead. The same love he'd tried to bury under duty and crown, and 6 months of pretending he'd made the right choice. Rowan looked at the pendant, at the broken chain, at the small silver moon that had once rested against Celine's throat. He'd given up everything for power. Now power was demanding he choose again. And this time, the cost might be her life. The reports from the North grew worse. Mining operations shut down. Entire clans vanishing into the mountains. Trade caravans attacked. And through it all, whispers of corruption, of someone inside the capital manipulating supplies, starving the northern territories deliberately. Rowan read the reports at his desk, Marcus standing across from him. This isn't rebellion, Rowan said. This is orchestrated. By who? That's what we need to find out. He looked up. I'm going north. Absolutely not. The council will never... I don't care what the council wants. My people are suffering. I'm going to find out why. Marcus stared at him. This is about her. This is about doing what's right. You're lying to yourself. You want to see her. I want to understand why an entire region is on the edge of starvation while the capital drowns in excess. Rowan slammed his hand on the desk. I want to know who's stealing from my people and why. Marcus held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. When do we leave? Tonight. Quietly. No announcement. Tell the council I'm inspecting border defenses. They'll figure it out. Let them. They rode north with a small group, 10 wolves, enough to handle trouble, but not enough to draw attention. Rowan wore regular armor, crown left behind, just another alpha traveling his territories. The further north they traveled, the worse conditions became. Villages half empty, people gaunt, fear in every face. One old woman grabbed Rowan's arm as he passed through a market. "You have to stop them," she whispered. "The council's men. They take everything, leave us nothing." "What men?" But she'd already pulled away, fear overriding desperation. They reached the mining territories on the 5th day. Rough country, harder people, the kind who survived through sheer stubbornness. And there, working the gate to a mining compound, was Celine. Rowan saw her before she saw him. She wore simple guard armor, hair pulled back, that same focused expression she always got when working, checking credentials, directing traffic, professional, efficient, beautiful. His chest seized. 6 months. Half a year since he'd seen her face, since he'd heard her voice, since he'd felt anything except the crown's weight. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. Everything stopped. She went very still. No recognition on her face, no anger, no pain, nothing, just blank, empty. Like looking at a stranger. That hurt worse than anything. Marcus grabbed his arm. "Rowan, don't." But he was already moving, walking toward her, closing the distance between them. Celine's hand dropped to her blade. Casual, automatic, the way it always did when she sensed threat. He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough that she wouldn't bolt. "Celine, you're not supposed to be here." Her voice flat, neutral, the way she'd talk to any stranger. "I'm inspecting the territories." Crown sitting heavy? The question landed like a blade. He deserved that. Deserved worse. "Can we talk?" "No." "Celine, I'm working. You're in the way." She turned back to the gate. "Move along, Your Majesty." The title cut. The same way it had cut in the arena. The same way it would cut forever. Rowan stood there, searching for words, for anything to bridge the canyon between them. But what could he say? Sorry didn't cover it. Regret didn't fix it. And explaining his choice just made him sound like exactly what he was, a coward who'd picked power over love. "Things are bad here," he said finally. "I'm trying to understand why." "Then ask your council. They're the ones making it bad." That made him freeze. "What?" But Celine had already walked away, disappearing into the compound, leaving him standing at the gate like the fool he was. Marcus appeared at his shoulder. "That went well." "Shut up." "She's right, you know. If the council's involved, then we find proof." Rowan turned. "Set up a base. Start investigating. I want to know exactly what's happening up here and who's responsible." The next 3 days were hell. Digging through records, interviewing villagers, following supply chains, and every evening watching Celine work the gate, never looking his direction, treating him like he didn't exist. But he found the proof, found shipping manifests showing supplies that never arrived, tax records that didn't match, payment orders to council members for resources that should have gone north. The council was bleeding the northern territories dry, systematically, deliberately, and they'd been doing it for years. The evidence sat on his desk, damning and absolute. This was his empire, his council, his responsibility, and he'd been so buried in his own misery he'd missed it completely. That night, Rowan sat alone in the commander's office they'd requisitioned, staring at the documents. Outside, wolves moved through the compound, guard rotations, workers heading home, normal life. And Celine walked past his window without looking in. He'd come north to understand the unrest. Instead, he'd uncovered corruption that went straight to the throat of his own government. The same council that had forced him to choose between throne and heart. The same elders who'd sworn to serve the empire. They were thieves, murderers, destroying their own people for profit. And if he confronted them, they'd do exactly what they'd done to his father. They'd kill him. Rowan looked at the silver pendant on his desk, looked at the reports, looked out the window where Celine had disappeared into the darkness. He'd made his choice 6 months ago in that arena. Now he was going to have to live with all the consequences. Or die with them. Because the council wasn't going to give up power without a fight. And Celine had just walked away from him without looking back. The king had won the throne. But the throne was about to demand he risk everything he'd sacrificed to keep it. The evidence sat in front of Rowan like a death sentence. 3 days of digging through records, cross-referencing shipping manifests, tracking payments that disappeared into council members' private accounts. The Northern Territories weren't failing by accident. They were being systematically bled dry by the same elders who'd put a crown on his head and told him it meant something. Marcus stood across the desk, jaw tight, reading through the final report. When he looked up, his eyes held the kind of rage that preceded wars. "They've been doing this since your father's time," Marcus said. "Maybe longer. Taking shipments meant for the North, reselling them to Southern Territories at markup, pocketing the difference. While people up here starve," Rowan's hands curled into fists. "How much? Millions. Enough to fund private armies. Enough to buy loyalty from half the nobles in the capital." The numbers were obscene, but the human cost was worse. Villages abandoned, children malnourished, entire bloodlines dying out because the council decided northern wolves were expendable. "We bring this to the capital," Rowan said. "Expose them, publicly. They'll kill you." Marcus didn't say it like a possibility. He said it like a fact. Same way they killed your father when he started asking questions about northern supply issues. Rowan had suspected. Now he knew. His father hadn't been assassinated by Southern rebels. He'd been murdered by the council he trusted, by the same men who controlled the throne. "Then we do it carefully." Rowan stood, gathering the documents. "We make copies. Distribute them to allies first. Build support before—" A knock at the door. One of their scouts entered, face pale. "Your Majesty, the council knows you're here. They've sent a regiment, 200 soldiers. They're 6 hours out." Marcus swore viciously. Rowan felt ice slide down his spine. "They're not coming to escort me home," he said quietly. "No." The scout looked sick. "Orders are to secure the mining territories. Bring you back for questioning about abandoning your post." "Questioning," Marcus laughed without humor. "That's what they called it when they dragged your father into that chamber, too." Rowan's mind raced. 200 soldiers against his 10. The compound had maybe 30 guards total. Not nearly enough. And if the council's regiment reached them, everyone here would be slaughtered as traitors, including Celine. The thought cut through everything else. She was here, working the gates, living her quiet life. And because he'd come north, because he'd started digging, she was about to be in the crossfire. "Evacuate the compound," Rowan ordered. "Everyone, now." "Where will they go?" the scout asked. "Mountains, caves, anywhere the regiment won't follow. Move." The scout ran. Marcus grabbed Rowan's arm. "We need to leave, now. Get ahead of them." "Not without warning everyone first." "Rowan, I'm not leaving these people to die because the council wants me dead." He pushed past Marcus, heading for the door. Outside, chaos already spreading. Word traveled fast in tight communities. Wolves running, grabbing supplies, parents clutching children. The organized compound dissolving into panicked flight. Rowan spotted Celine at the main gate, directing evacuation traffic with the same cold efficiency she brought to everything. Calm in crisis, always had been. He moved toward her through the crowd. She saw him coming. Her expression didn't change. "You need to go," he said when he reached her. "I'm working." "The council's sending soldiers. They're coming to kill me. Anyone nearby becomes collateral." That made her pause. Just for a second. Then she went back to directing refugees. "Not my problem." "Celine, you made your choice 6 months ago." She finally looked at him, really looked, and her eyes were empty, dead. "You chose the crown, the power. You chose to let the council own you. Now they're collecting. That's not my fight anymore. They're killing people up here, stealing supplies, starving entire clans. I have proof." "Great, take it to your council. I'm sure they'll care." The sarcasm cut like glass. Rowan grabbed her arm, pulling her aside as more refugees flooded past. "Listen to me. The council murdered my father. They've been bleeding the North for years. And when they get here, they're going to slaughter everyone in this compound to make sure no evidence survives." Celine yanked her arm free. "Then you better run fast, Your Majesty." "I'm not leaving without you." "Don't." Her voice dropped. "Turn dangerous. Don't you dare stand here and pretend you care what happens to me. You let my hand go in front of 10,000 witnesses. You chose power over everything we had. Now you want to play hero because your conscience finally woke up?" She stepped closer. You don't get to do that. You don't get to waltz back into my life acting like you give a damn. I never stopped. Don't say it. She cut him off. Don't say you never stopped caring, because if you cared, you wouldn't have walked away. If you cared, you would have told the council to burn and taken my hand. But you didn't. You let go. So stay, let go. She turned away. Rowan caught her wrist. I was wrong. Celine went very still. Around them, the evacuation continued. Wolves running, shouting, chaos. But in their small bubble, everything stopped. Say that again, she said quietly. I was wrong. I thought the Empire needed a king more than I needed you. I thought duty mattered more than love. I thought I could carry the crown's weight if it meant protecting everyone. His grip tightened. I was wrong about all of it. She pulled free again, but slower this time. You figured that out now? After 6 months? After I rebuilt my entire life away from you? I figured it out the second I let your hand go. I've just been too much of a coward to admit it. Celine's jaw clenched. Some emotion flickered behind her eyes. Not forgiveness. Something rawer, angrier. The regiment's 6 hours out, she said finally. You have evidence the council's corrupt. What's your plan? Get the documents to allies in the capital. Build a case. Expose them publicly before they can silence me. They'll kill you before you get that far. Probably. Definitely. She looked at him like he was stupid. You're talking about going against men who've controlled this empire for decades. Men who murdered your father. You think they're going to let you parade evidence in front of nobles and walk away? I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices. You're just finally making one that matters. Celine glanced at the gate where the last refugees were fleeing. The mountains have cave systems, old mining tunnels. You're 10 wolves plus whoever stays to fight, maybe 40 total. Not enough to face 200. I know, but enough to disappear. Make them hunt. Draw them into terrain where numbers don't matter. Rowan studied her. You have a plan. I have survival instincts. There's a difference. She moved toward the compound's interior. Follow me, and keep your mouth shut. He followed. Marcus fell in beside him, confused but smart enough not to ask questions. Celine led them through the compound to a storage building. Inside, crates of mining equipment. She moved to the back wall, pressing on specific stones. A section swung open, darkness beyond. Old smuggling tunnels, Celine explained. Miners use them to move goods without council taxes, connect to the mountain caves. 3 different exits spread over 2 miles. How do you know about these? I listen. You should try it. She grabbed a torch, lit it. Your soldiers can hide down here, split up, use different exits, make the regiment think you scattered in panic. They'll divide forces trying to find you. And then what? Then you stop thinking like a king and start thinking like a fighter. She looked at him. The council's soldiers aren't coming to arrest you. They're coming to murder you and everyone who knows what you found. So you hit them first. Ambushes, quick strikes. Make them bleed for every inch of ground. Marcus grinned. I like how she thinks. While they're busy hunting ghosts in the mountains, you send your fastest rider to the capital with the evidence, Celine continued. Someone they won't expect, someone who can move quiet. Who? Me. Rowan's chest tightened. No. It's not your call. Like hell it's not. I'm not sending you into the capital alone with information that'll get you killed. You don't get a vote. Celine met his eyes. You wanted to fix your mistake? This is how. You fight here. Tie up the regiment. Give me time to reach allies who might actually care that the council's corrupt. Or you can keep arguing and we all die when those soldiers arrive. She was right. Rowan hated that she was right. Hated more that the smart move meant putting her in danger. Who do we send the evidence to? Marcus asked. Duke Aldrich, Rowan said. Southern Territories. He hated the council even before this. He'll use the information. If I reach him, Celine moved back toward the tunnel entrance. I leave now. Travel light. 3 days hard ride if I don't stop. Celine, don't. She turned. Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Don't do anything except survive long enough for this to matter. You chose the crown. Now prove it was worth choosing. She disappeared into the tunnel before he could respond. Just gone. Like smoke. Like she'd been 6 months ago. Marcus watched her go, then looked at Rowan. You're an idiot. I know. I mean truly stupid, Spectacular levels of stupid. Are you done? Not even close, but we have work to do. Marcus turned toward the compound. Let's go make the council regret sending only 200 soldiers. The next 3 hours blurred together. Rowan organized the remaining fighters, moved supplies into the tunnels, rigged the compound with traps. Basic stuff. Tripwires. Deadfalls. Nothing sophisticated, but enough to make advancing through the buildings costly. The civilians were gone, scattered into the mountains. Just fighters now. 40 wolves against 200. Terrible odds, the kind that made legends or graves. Rowan worked alongside them. No crown, no ceremony, just another alpha trying to survive. Some of the northern wolves recognized him. Most didn't care. They'd chosen to stay because the council had been killing them slowly for years, and this was a chance to kill back. One of the older guards, a scarred woman named Kara, approached him while he was setting charges in the main building. "You're really doing this," she said, "going against the council." "Yeah. Your father tried. They cut his throat for it." "I know." "You know what they'll do to you if they win here?" "Same thing. Probably worse for the publicity." Kara studied him with eyes that had seen too much death. "The girl, Celine, she talked about you sometimes, when she first got here. Never said your name. Just talked about someone who chose power over her. Sounded like she hated you." Rowan's hands stilled on the charges. "She should. Maybe. But she's riding into hell to save your stupid ass anyway." Kara turned away. "Don't waste that. Don't make her sacrifice mean nothing." She left. Rowan finished the charges, hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, from the weight of understanding that Celine was risking everything for him after what he'd done. That somewhere in the wreckage of what they'd been, she still cared enough to try. Or maybe she just hated the council more than she hated him. Either way, he couldn't let her down. Not again. The sun was setting when the regiment appeared. 200 soldiers in council colors, moving in formation. Professional. Disciplined. The kind of force that crushed rebellions and asked questions never. Their commander was a wolf named Silas. Rowan recognized him from the capital. One of the council's personal executioners, the kind who followed orders without conscience. Silas rode to the compound's edge, surveying the silent buildings. Smart enough to sense a trap. His soldiers spread out, establishing perimeter, moving with practiced efficiency. "Rowan Vale," Silas called. His voice echoed across the empty compound. "Your king commands your presence. Come peacefully, and no one else dies tonight." Rowan stood on the main building's roof, visible in the fading light. 40 fighters hidden throughout the compound. Traps set, tunnels ready for retreat. "The council isn't my king," he shouted back. "I am." Silas smiled. "Not anymore. You abandoned your post, conspired with northern rebels. The council has declared you traitor. Come quietly, or we burn this place with you inside." "Try it." The commander's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that." He gave the order. Soldiers advanced, moving building to building, checking corners, professional. They made it 20 feet before the first trap triggered. The explosion ripped through the lead squad, fire and shrapnel, wolves screaming. The formation broke as soldiers scrambled for cover. Rowan's fighters opened fire from hidden positions. Arrows, crossbow bolts, not enough to win, but enough to make the regiment pay for every inch. Chaos erupted. The council soldiers fell back, regrouped, advanced again. More traps, more ambushes. The compound turned into a maze of death. Rowan fought from the rooftops, bow in hand, picking targets. Marcus led a squad through the tunnels, hitting flanks and vanishing before response. The northern wolves fought like demons, all their years of suffering channeled into brutal efficiency. But 200 against 40 was math that didn't care about righteous fury. Slowly, inevitably, the regiment pushed forward, taking buildings, securing ground, losing soldiers but gaining territory. Professional, relentless. Rowan gave the signal. His fighters retreated into the tunnels, building by building, fighting withdrawal, making the regiment work for it but not dying uselessly. Silas realized what was happening too late. By the time his soldiers secured the compound, Rowan's force had vanished underground. The tunnels too narrow for formation fighting, perfect terrain for ambush. The regiment commander stood in the empty compound, surrounded by his dead, and knew he'd been played. "Find them," he snarled. "Search every tunnel. I want Vale's head by morning." His soldiers descended into the darkness, into territory they didn't know against wolves who'd spent weeks learning every passage. The real killing started then. In the tunnels, numbers meant nothing. The regiment soldiers moved in tight groups, torches blazing, and died in the dark when Rowan's fighters struck from side passages and vanished. Screams echoed through stone. Blood ran on ancient rock. Rowan fought alongside Marcus, blade wet, fighting the kind of close-quarters battle where hesitation meant death. No room for doubt, no space for mercy, just survival. They'd been underground for 3 hours when one of the scouts found him. "The regiment's pulling back," the scout reported. Silas called retreat. "They're camping outside the compound, waiting for dawn." "Casualties?" Rowan asked. "Them? Maybe 70 dead? Us? 12. Terrible losses for them. Catastrophic for Rowan's smaller force. But they'd survived the first night. That was something." Marcus appeared from a side tunnel, covered in blood. "We can't do this again. One more push like that and we're done." "We don't have to." Rowan moved toward the eastern exit. "We held them one night, gave Celine time to get ahead. Now we disappear, split up, make them hunt us in the mountains. And if she doesn't reach the Duke, then we die buying time for nothing." Rowan looked at his beta. "But at least we die fighting instead of on our knees in the capital." Marcus grinned, blood on his teeth. "Fair enough." They split the force. Small groups, different exits, scattering into the mountains like smoke. By the time Silas's regiment entered the tunnels at dawn, they found nothing except corpses and empty passages. The hunt was on. 3 days of running, of fighting when cornered, of watching the regiment spread thin trying to find them. Rowan's groups hit supply lines, killed scouts, made every hour cost the council soldiers. But they were losing, slowly, inevitably, running out of supplies, running out of places to hide. The mountains were vast, but not infinite. On the 4th day, Rowan's group, down to 6 wolves, found themselves trapped in a narrow canyon. 30 soldiers blocking the exit. No way out except through them. Marcus checked his weapons. "This is it." "Yeah." "Any regrets?" Rowan thought about Celine, boy, about the pendant in his pocket, about choosing the crown and losing everything that mattered. "Just one." "The girl?" "Always the girl." They charged, 6 against 30, suicide. But if they were dying, they'd die like alphas. The fight was brutal. Rowan killed 4 before a blade caught him across the ribs. Dropped to one knee, vision blurring, soldier moving in for the kill. Then a horn sounded, clear and sharp, the kind nobles used for formal arrivals. Everyone stopped, turned, stared. Coming through the canyon's far end was a force that made Silas's regiment look small. 500 wolves in Duke Aldrich's colors, banners flying, organized, pissed, and at their head, sitting a warhorse like she'd been born to it, was Celine. She'd made it. She'd reached Aldrich. She'd brought an army. The Duke himself rode beside her, gray-haired and built like violence. He surveyed the scene with cold eyes. "Silas," Aldrich called, "stand down, now." The regiment commander hesitated. The council just got exposed for systematic theft and murder. I have signed testimony from King Rowan. Shipping records, payment ledgers, everything." Aldrich's voice could have cut stone. "You want to keep following orders from men who'll hang for treason? Or you want to surrender and maybe live through the day?" Silas looked at his soldiers, at Aldrich's force, at Rowan bleeding on the ground. He dropped his weapon. The regiment surrendered. All of them, just like that. The fight was over. Celine dismounted, moving through the crowd to Rowan. She dropped to her knees beside him, checking the wound. "You're an idiot," she said. "So Marcus keeps telling me." "Charging 30 soldiers with 6 wolves. What were you thinking?" "That I was probably going to die. Wanted to make it count." Her hand stilled on his ribs. "Don't do that again." "Can't promise anything." She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in 6 months, he saw something besides emptiness in her eyes. Something raw and real and still bleeding. "You better survive this," she said quietly. "Because if you die before I decide whether to forgive you, I'll resurrect you just to kill you myself." Rowan laughed, regretted it immediately when pain shot through his ribs. "Fair." Aldrich approached, looking down at them. "You've started a war, boy." "I know. Good." The Duke smiled, sharp, mean. Let's go finish it. They rode for the capital, 500 strong plus the fragments of Rowan's northern force. Word spread ahead of them. The king lives. The council's crimes exposed. Choose sides. Some nobles joined them. Others fled to the capital, to the council's protection. The empire fractured along lines of loyalty and corruption. By the time they reached the capital, Rowan's force had swelled to 2,000. Aldrich commanded the army. Rowan rode at the front despite his wound, crown finally back on his head, looking like something between king and avenging ghost. Celine rode beside him, not behind, not ahead, beside, where she'd always belonged. They didn't speak during the ride, nothing to say that hadn't been said, but the space between them felt different, still broken, still bleeding, but not quite as empty. The capital's gates were closed when they arrived, walls manned. The council had called every loyal soldier, maybe 3,000, maybe more. This wasn't going to be a battle. This was going to be a slaughter. Rowan stared at the walls, at the city he thought he was protecting, at the empire that had cost him everything. Last chance to back out, Celine said beside him. You want me to? No. She looked at him. I want you to burn them down. Every elder who forced that choice. Every bastard who profited while people starved. I want you to tear that council apart and build something better from the ashes. That's war. Real war. Thousands will die. Thousands are already dying. Have been for years. You're just making it fast instead of slow. Rowan turned in his saddle, looked at the army behind him, at the wolves who'd chosen to follow, at Marcus and Aldrich and all the others who'd bet their lives on him being worth following, at Celine, who'd ridden into hell to give him this chance. He'd chosen the crown once before, chosen power over love, chosen duty over heart. Now the crown was demanding he choose again. Except this time, the choice was different. This time he'd burned the whole empire down before he let the council control him. Rowan raised his sword, his army roared, the siege began. And somewhere inside those walls, the council realized they'd made a mistake. They'd thought the crown controlled the king. They'd forgotten that kings could choose to take the crown off and just be wolves who'd been pushed too far. The siege lasted 7 days before the walls came down. Not through force, through defection. Soldiers inside the capital realized they were defending men who'd stolen from their families, who'd let their children starve while lining council coffers. One gate opened, then another. By dawn of the 8th day, Rowan's army poured into the city without a final battle. The people welcomed them, lined the streets, cheered, threw flowers, like he was some liberating hero instead of a king fighting to keep his own throne. Rowan rode through it all with his jaw clenched, Celine at his side, Marcus and Aldrich flanking. The crown sat heavy, heavier than it had in the arena 6 months ago, because now he understood what it actually meant, not power, not glory, just endless weight and consequences that never stopped coming. The council had barricaded themselves in the palace, specifically in the throne room itself. Poetic. Pathetic. They'd built their power on ceremony and tradition, and now they'd die surrounded by it. Rowan dismounted at the palace steps, 2,000 wolves at his back. The building that had been his home, his prison, now felt like a tomb waiting to happen. Celine touched his arm, just briefly. You ready? No. Good. Means you're thinking clearly. They entered. Through halls Rowan had walked his entire life, past portraits of kings who'd come before. His father's face stared down from one wall, throat intact in the painting, eyes judging. Marcus had wanted to bring the whole army inside. Rowan refused. Just 20 wolves, his personal guard, enough to handle the council's remaining loyalists, but not enough to turn this into a bloodbath. The throne room doors were sealed, barred from inside. Rowan could hear movement beyond. Whispers. The sound of scared men pretending to be brave. Break it down, he ordered. His guards hit the doors with a battering ram. Ancient wood splintered. The bar inside cracked. 3 hits and the doors exploded inward. The throne room looked like a war council. The 7 elders stood in a semicircle around the throne itself. Maybe 30 soldiers with them, all armed, all looking like they knew this was their last stand. Elder Matthias stood at the center, white robes pristine despite everything. That same carved stone expression, that same absolute certainty that tradition and law were on his side. Rowan Vale, he said. voice still carrying that ceremonial weight. You stand in violation of every law that governs this empire. You have abandoned your post, conspired with rebels, brought armed forces against your own capital. Shut up, Rowan said. Matthias blinked, like he'd never been interrupted before. Probably hadn't. You will address the council with... I said shut up. Rowan walked forward. His guards spread out, surrounding the council's soldiers. You murdered my father. You've been stealing from the northern territories for decades. You forced me to abandon the woman I loved so you could control me. And now you're going to stand there and lecture me about law? We did what was necessary for the empire's stability. You did what was profitable. There's a difference. Elder Catherine stepped forward, sharp as ever. You have no proof of these accusations. I have shipping records, payment ledgers, testimony from a dozen nobles. I have everything. Rowan pulled the documents from his coat, the same ones Celine had carried to Aldrich. And in about 6 hours, every alpha in this empire is going to know exactly what you've done. The elders exchanged glances, the kind that preceded desperate measures. This is treason, Matthias said. Yeah, yours. We represent 3 centuries of tradition, of law. You cannot simply watch me. Rowan turned to his guards. Arrest them, all of them. They'll stand trial for theft, murder, and corruption, publicly, where everyone can see what they've done. That was when everything went wrong. Marcus moved, not toward the elders, toward Rowan. Blade already drawn, fast, professional, the kind of strike that came from years of practice. Rowan saw it half a second too late, twisted. The blade that should have taken his throat caught his shoulder instead. Pain exploded, blood sprayed. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring, and stared up at his beta, his friend, the man who'd stood at his side for 5 years, the man who'd just tried to kill him. Marcus? The word came out confused, hurt, like a child who didn't understand why he was bleeding. His beta looked down at him with eyes full of regret. I'm sorry. They have my family, my children. They said... His voice cracked. They said if I didn't do this, they'd kill them all. The throne room erupted. Rowan's guards moved toward Marcus. The council's soldiers attacked. Chaos, steel on steel, screaming. Celine was there suddenly, dragging Rowan behind the throne, her blade out, holding position like a demon. 3 soldiers came at her. She killed them all. Efficient, brutal, covered in blood in seconds. Stay down, she snarled at Rowan. Don't you dare die on me. But Rowan couldn't look away from Marcus. His beta fought Rowan's own guards now, killing men he'd trained, men he'd led, tears on his face the whole time. The council had done this, turned his friend into a weapon, taken the one person Rowan trusted absolutely and made him a betrayer. And Rowan understood with sick clarity that this was the real power of the council, not armies, not tradition, the ability to turn anyone against anyone by finding what they loved and threatening it. They'd done it to him in the arena, made him choose between Celine and Empire. Now they'd done it to Marcus, made him choose between loyalty and family. Everyone had a breaking point. Everyone had something they'd betray the world to protect. The council just knew how to find it. Aldrich appeared beside Celine, his own blade wet. We need to move. Get him out of here. Not without dealing with them. Celine gestured at the elders. But the council was already retreating, moving through a hidden door behind the throne. Escape route. Of course they had escape routes. Men like that always did. Rowan tried to stand. His shoulders screamed. Celine caught him before he fell. Marcus, he managed, is trying to kill you. They have his children. I don't care. But Rowan cared. Even bleeding, even betrayed. He cared because Marcus was his friend and the council had turned him into this. Take him alive, Rowan ordered. Don't kill him. He stabbed you. I said alive, Ed. Celine looked at him like he was insane. Maybe he was. But he wasn't going to let the council take anyone else he cared about. Aldrich's wolves subdued Marcus, took him down without killing him. The beta didn't fight much after that, just knelt there on blood-stained marble, hands bound, staring at nothing. The throne room cleared, bodies everywhere, the council gone. Rowan's grand plan to arrest them publicly turning into exactly the bloodbath he'd wanted to avoid. Celine pressed cloth to his shoulder. How bad? Bad enough. You need a healer. I need to find those bastards. You need to not bleed out in your own throne room. She was right. Rowan hated that she was right, but the wound was deep, bleeding heavily. His vision kept trying to gray out. They got him to his chambers. A healer came, stitched the wound, gave him something for pain that made everything soft and distant. Rowan lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling while reports filtered in. The council had escaped through old tunnels under the palace, gone underground, disappeared into the city's depths with loyalists protecting them. 2 of Rowan's guards were dead, 5 more wounded, all because he trusted Marcus, all because the council knew exactly where to strike. Celine sat in a chair by the window, cleaning blood from her blade. Not his blood, someone else's. She'd killed 4 soldiers defending him, 4 wolves who'd just been following orders from men they'd been taught to obey. I should have seen it, Rowan said. The drug's making him honest, making him raw. Marcus has been quiet for weeks, distracted. I thought he was just stressed about the campaign. You can't predict everything. I'm supposed to. I'm king. I'm supposed to know who to trust. The council's been playing this game for centuries. You've been king for 6 months. You were always going to make mistakes. Rowan looked at her, really looked. She'd come back for him, ridden into danger, killed to protect him, after everything he'd done. Why? He asked. Why what? Why did you come back? After the arena, after I let you go. You could have stayed gone, built a new life, but you came back and you've been risking your life for me and I don't understand why. Celine stopped cleaning her blade, set it aside, looked at him with those green eyes that had haunted his dreams for 6 months. You really want to know? Yeah. Because I'm an idiot. Because even after you broke my heart in front of 10,000 wolves, some stupid part of me still believes you're worth saving. Because I saw the proof of what the council did and realized you never really had a choice in that arena. They'd already won before you ever let my hand go. She stood, moving to the bed. And because I'm not done being angry at you. If you die now, I don't get to make you suffer for what you did. That should have hurt. Instead, it felt like hope. Are you going to forgive me? Rowan asked. Eventually? I don't know. Ask me when this is over. If we survive. When? She touched his uninjured shoulder, just briefly. We've survived worse. Had they? Rowan wasn't sure. This felt different, more personal. The council wasn't just trying to kill him. They were trying to destroy everything he cared about, his friends, his people, his chance at fixing what he'd broken. I need to find them, he said. You need to heal first. People are dying every day they're free. People will die every day regardless. That's what war is. Celine sat on the bed's edge. You charged into the north with 10 wolves. You survived a siege. You took the capital. You're allowed to rest for 5 minutes before running toward the next disaster. But Rowan couldn't rest. Not with the council loose, not with Marcus locked in the dungeons, broken by impossible choices, not with the empire fractured and bleeding. He tried to sit up. His shoulder erupted in pain. Celine pushed him back down. Stop being stupid, she said. It's my natural state. I've noticed. They stayed like that for a moment. Close but not touching. Years of history and hurt between them, but also something else. Something that hadn't died despite everything. A knock at the door. Aldrich entered without waiting. The Duke looked tired, battle-worn, older than when they'd left the north. We've secured the city, he reported. Most of the council's forces surrendered. The ones who didn't are dead or hiding. And the elders? Rowan asked. Gone. Completely. It's like they vanished into smoke. Aldrich moved to the window. But we did find something, in Matthias's chambers, documents, correspondence. What kind? The kind that explain how they knew about your investigation in the north so fast. The kind that show they've been planning this for months. Aldrich's jaw tightened. They have spies everywhere, Rowan, in your guard, in the noble houses, maybe in this room for all we know. The implications hit like a blade. The council hadn't just reacted to Rowan's investigation. They'd known it was coming, had prepared, had positioned Marcus's family where they could be threatened, had set everything up perfectly. They wanted me to find that corruption, Rowan said slowly. The pieces falling together despite the pain medication. They wanted me to come north, Wanted me to expose them publicly so they'd have an excuse to move against me. But why? Celine asked. Why engineer their own exposure? Because exposure doesn't matter if I'm dead. And if I died in the North like they planned, the evidence dies with me. They declare me a traitor, install a new puppet king, blame the Northern corruption on me posthumously. Perfect solution. Aldrich nodded. Except you survived and brought an army back. So now they're improvised, desperate, which makes them more dangerous. Rowan's mind raced. The council wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. They'd built their power over decades. They wouldn't let one king tear it down without burning the whole empire first. They're going to hit something big, he said. Something that hurts me personally. That's their pattern. They don't just kill, they destroy. What's left? Celine asked. They've already tried to murder you, used your beta against you. What else? She stopped. Her face went pale. The northern refugees, the ones who fled the mining territories. Rowan's blood turned to ice. Where are they? Camps, 3 locations, spread across the countryside, mostly women and children. Your guards are supposed to be protecting them, but if the council has spies in the guard, those camps are undefended. Rowan forced himself to sit up despite the pain. How many people? 2,000, maybe more. 2,000 civilians, families. The people Rowan had told to run, promised to protect, and now they were sitting targets. We need to move, Rowan said. Now. You can barely stand, Aldrich pointed out. Don't care, we're moving. Celine looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll get horses, 20 riders, fast and quiet. Make it 30, Aldrich said. If the council's hitting all 3 camps, we'll need to split forces. They moved. Rowan's shoulder screamed every time he shifted, but he ignored it, strapped on armor, took weapons, headed for the stables with Celine and Aldrich. The city was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next disaster. They rode out just after dark. 30 wolves, split into 3 groups, each heading for one of the refugee camps. Rowan led one group himself despite everyone's protests. Celine rode with him because she was too stubborn to let him die alone. The camp was 3 hours north. They pushed the horses hard, arrived just before midnight, and found hell waiting. The camp was burning, tents ablaze, bodies everywhere, men in council colors moving through the carnage, killing anyone who moved. Rowan didn't think, just charged, his group following, crashing into the enemy like thunder. The fight was chaos, fire and smoke and screaming. Rowan killed 3 soldiers before his shoulder gave out, fell from his horse. Celine was there immediately, standing over him, her blade a silver blur. They were outnumbered, 20 against maybe 60. Terrible odds. Then more riders appeared, not council soldiers, Duke Aldrich's forces. The old wolf had sent reinforcements. Smart, always thinking ahead. The tide turned, the council's forces broke, ran, scattered into the darkness. Rowan stood among the burning tents, breathing hard, shoulder bleeding again through the bandages. Around him, survivors emerged, families he'd told to run, people he'd promised to protect. Half of them were dead. Children, elders, civilians who'd never held a weapon, slaughtered because the council wanted to hurt him. Celine found him standing there, staring at the carnage. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him. Let him process. This is what power costs, Rowan said quietly. Not crowns, not ceremony, this, dead children because I thought I could fight the council and win. You didn't kill them, the council did. I put them here. I told them they'd be safe. You tried to keep them safe. There's a difference. Was there? Rowan wasn't sure anymore. All he knew was that more people had died. More blood on his hands. More souls he'd failed. They buried the dead through the night. Rowan helped despite his wound, carried bodies, dug graves, refused to let anyone else shoulder the burden of his choices. By dawn, the other groups had reported in. The second camp had been attacked, but they'd arrived in time. Minimal casualties. The third camp was untouched. The council's forces had hit hardest where they thought Rowan would be. They'd guessed right. Back at the capital, Rowan stood in the war room, looking at maps. Aldrich beside him, Celine across the table, Marcus locked in a cell 3 floors down, guarded by wolves who wanted him dead for betraying their king. We can't keep reacting, Aldrich said. We need to find the council and end this. They're underground, Celine said. Literally. The tunnels under the city connect to everything. They could be anywhere. Then we flood the tunnels, Aldrich suggested. Collapse them, force them to surface. And kill everyone sheltering down there. Civilians, refugees, people who have nothing to do with this. Rowan shook his head. No. We do this clean. Clean doesn't exist anymore, Aldrich said. You need to accept that. Maybe the Duke was right. Maybe there was no clean way to win this. Maybe Rowan had been naive, thinking he could tear down the council without becoming exactly what they were. They'll hit again, Celine said. Something worse. They're not going to stop until you're dead, or they are. She was right. The council had nothing left to lose. They'd gone all in. Either Rowan fell or they did. I need to talk to Marcus, Rowan said. Both Aldrich and Celine stared at him. He tried to kill you, Celine said, because they threatened his family. I need to know if there's anyone else compromised, anyone else they're controlling. Or he could lie, tell you what the council wants you to hear. Maybe, but I have to try. The dungeons were cold, dark. Marcus sat in a cell that had probably held his own prisoners during his time as Beta, hands chained, face empty. He looked up when Rowan entered. Something flickered in his eyes. Shame, regret, maybe hope. Come to execute me? Marcus asked. Should I? Probably. Rowan pulled a chair close to the bars, sat despite the pain in his shoulder, studied his former friend. They have your wife, Rowan said. Your 2 children. Where? I don't know. They moved them months ago, before any of this started. Said they'd kill them if I didn't follow orders when the time came. How did you communicate with the council? Dead drops, messages. I never met anyone directly. Marcus leaned forward. Rowan, I swear I didn't want to do it, but they had my children. What would you have done? That was the question, wasn't it? What would Rowan have done in Marcus's position? He wanted to say he'd have refused, died first. But that was easy to say when it wasn't his family being threatened. Are there others? Rowan asked. Other people they're controlling? Marcus hesitated. That hesitation told Rowan everything. Who? I don't know for certain, but there were hints. Other dead drops. Other wolves acting strange. I think... He stopped. I think Elena. Rowan's blood went cold. Elena, his father's old advisor. Now his. She'd been in the palace since before he was born, had access to everything, knew every secret, every plan. You sure? No, but I saw her in the old quarter 3 times in the last month. No reason for her to be there, and one of my dead drop locations was nearby. Rowan stood. If Elena was compromised, the council knew everything, every strategy, every movement. They'd always be one step ahead. If I'm wrong, Marcus started. Then I apologized to her posthumously. Rowan headed for the door. Rowan, my family. If you win, if you survive this, please find them. They're innocent. Rowan looked back. If I survive, I'll find them. I promise. He left, climbed the stairs, found Aldrich and Celine still in the war room. Where's Elena? Rowan asked. Her chambers probably. Why? Because she's been working for the council. Aldrich's hand dropped to his blade. You sure? Sure enough. Get your best wolves. We're ending this now. Elena's chambers were in the palace's west wing. They moved quietly. 20 wolves, surrounding the area. No escape. Rowan knocked on her door. Polite, civilized. The way you'd knock on an advisor's door. Elena opened it, took in the armed wolves, the expressions on their faces, and smiled. Took you long enough, she said. How long? Rowan asked. Since your father died. They approached me after, offered money, protection, said I could keep my position if I just reported back occasionally. She stepped aside. You coming in, or are we doing this in the hallway? They entered. Elena's chambers were simple, Spartan. Nothing personal, like she'd always known she might have to run. Where's the council? Rowan asked. Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Elena poured herself wine, drank. They're not stupid, boy. They knew you'd figure out about me eventually, but by the time you did, they'd already be positioned for the final move. What final move? The one that ends you? Rowan felt Celine tense beside him. Explain. The Winter Assembly, 3 days from now. Every alpha in the Empire will be at the arena. 10,000 wolves, civilians, nobles, everyone. Elena smiled. The council's going to burn it down. Kill everyone inside. Blame you. Install a new king from the ashes. That's insane. That's survival. They can't control you, can't predict you. So they'll erase you and everyone who supports you. Start fresh with someone they can own completely. Rowan's mind raced. The Winter Assembly was mandatory, ancient tradition. Every alpha attended or risked being declared outcast. If the council attacked during the ceremony, thousands would die. You're lying, Celine said. Am I? Elena looked at her. Think about it. They've lost everything. Their power, their reputation, their position. What do they have left except one final strike that reshapes the entire empire? She was right. Rowan could see it. The council backed into a corner, desperate, willing to burn the world rather than lose. How? He asked. How are they planning to do it? Fire, explosives, coordinated assault. I don't know specifics. They keep me compartmentalized. Elena finished her wine. But I know it's happening, and I know you can't stop it. Watch me. Watch. You misunderstand. I'm not warning you to help. I'm warning you because it doesn't matter. Even knowing it's coming, you can't prevent it. Cancel the assembly and you look weak, lose the Empire's respect. Attend and they kill everyone you care about. Either way, you lose. Rowan stared at her. At this woman who'd advised his father, who'd pretended to serve him, who'd betrayed everything for gold and safety. Take her to the dungeons, he ordered. As guards led Elena away, she called back. 3 days, boy. Then you'll understand what real power looks like. Then you'll wish you'd just died in the arena with your dignity intact. The door closed. Rowan stood in the empty chambers, mind working through scenarios. Every option led to disaster. Celine touched his arm. What are you thinking? That she's right. I can't cancel the assembly, can't not attend. But if I go, I'm walking into a massacre. Then we set a trap. Let them think you're vulnerable. Hit them when they attack. With 10,000 civilians in the crossfire. Celine had no answer for that. Aldrich appeared in the doorway. We've questioned Elena's servants, found correspondence. She's been feeding the council information for months, every plan, every movement. They've known everything. So every decision Rowan had made, every strategy, every secret, the council had known all of it, had been 5 steps ahead the whole time. He'd never had a chance. We evacuate the arena, Rowan said. Move the assembly somewhere else. Where? Aldrich asked. The arena is the only space large enough. Tradition demands. Screw tradition. You can't. The other alphas will see it as weakness. Refuse to attend. The Empire will fracture completely. Rowan wanted to scream, wanted to tear something apart. Instead, he just stood there, feeling the walls close in. The council had trapped him perfectly. Attend the assembly and die. Don't attend and lose the Empire. Either choice was defeat. I'm going, Rowan said finally. That's suicide, Celine said. Everything's suicide at this point. He looked at her. But I'm not letting them kill 10,000 people to get to me. We'll evacuate as many as we can, quietly. Make it look like normal attendance. Then when the council makes their move, we'll be ready. Ready how? Aldrich asked. I'm still figuring that part out. Celine stared at him. You're planning to die there. I can see it in your eyes. You're going to the arena planning to not come back. I'm planning to win by sacrificing yourself. If that's what it takes. She grabbed his arm, hard. No, we don't do that. We don't just surrender because the council's backed us into a corner. What choice do I have? The choice to fight, to survive, to not give them the satisfaction of dying like they want. Her grip tightened. You walked away from me once because you thought duty mattered more. Don't you dare do it again by dying for the same reason. Rowan met her eyes. Saw fury there, fear, and underneath it all, something that looked like love that hadn't quite died. I let your hand go in that arena, he said quietly. Biggest mistake of my life. I'm not making another one. I'm not letting the council win, even if it costs me everything. It already cost you everything. Not yet. I still have a chance to make it right, to build something better than what my father left. To prove that choosing the crown can mean something other than just power. He touched her face. First time in 6 months. But I need to survive the next 3 days first. Celine leaned into his touch, just slightly, just enough. Then we survive together, she said. No more separating. No more you running toward disaster alone. We do this together or not at all. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to keep her safe, but he was done making decisions for her, done treating her like she needed protection instead of partnership. Together, he agreed. Outside the window, the capital sprawled under stars. Somewhere in those streets, the council hid, planning their final strike, their last desperate gambit to reshape the empire. In 3 days, the winter assembly would begin, and one way or another, everything would end. Rowan had chosen the crown once before, chosen power over love, duty over heart, had spent 6 months drowning in that choice. Now he was going to have to choose again, but this time the cost wasn't just his heart, it was his life, and maybe the lives of everyone he'd ever cared about. The throne sat empty in the next room, waiting, always waiting, a reminder of what he'd sacrificed, what he'd become. Rowan wondered if his father had felt this same crushing weight before they killed him, this same understanding that being king didn't mean power. It meant being the target everyone else aimed at until something finally landed. 3 days, then fire and blood and the end of everything, or the beginning of something new. If he could just survive long enough to find out which. 3 days felt like 3 hours. Rowan spent every waking moment preparing for the winter assembly. Not the ceremony itself, the war that would erupt inside it. He couldn't cancel without looking weak, couldn't evacuate without tipping his hand. So he did the only thing left. He prepared to turn the arena into a battlefield and pray more innocents survived than died. The morning of the assembly arrived cold and clear. Perfect weather for tradition. Perfect weather for slaughter. Rowan stood in his chambers staring at the crown. He'd worn it for 6 months, felt its weight every single day. Now it sat on its stand like an accusation, a reminder of everything he'd sacrificed and everything he was about to risk. Celine entered without knocking. She wore armor instead of ceremony clothes. Battle gear, ready for war. She'd refused to leave his side since Elena's revelation, slept in a chair outside his chambers, followed him through every meeting, like she was afraid if she looked away for even a second, he'd vanish or die or both. Rowan understood. He felt the same about her. Aldrich's positioned forces around the arena, she reported. 500 wolves. Hidden. Dressed as civilians and vendors. If the council makes a move, we'll respond. And the evacuation? Ongoing. We've convinced about 2,000 people to stay home. Fake illnesses, family emergencies. But 8,000 are still attending. We couldn't evacuate more without making it obvious. 8,000. Still too many. Still enough for the council to commit mass murder and reshape the empire through terror. The other alphas? Rowan asked. Most are attending. A few sent proxies. They're suspicious, but tradition demands presence. Celine moved closer. You don't have to do this. We could still run. Leave the capital, regroup. And let the council win? And survive. Rowan picked up the crown, felt its cold weight. My father ran once. When he first learned the council was stealing from the north, he thought he could gather evidence quietly. Build a case slowly. They killed him for it. Slit his throat in his own chambers because he tried to play it safe. So you're going to charge into an obvious trap instead? I'm going to face them head on. Make them attack in the open. Force them to show their hand in front of every alpha in the empire. He placed the crown on his head. If I die, at least everyone will know who killed me. What the council really is. That's worth more than survival. Celine stared at him with an expression caught between fury and desperation. You're talking like you're already dead. I'm talking like a king who's tired of running. That's not king talk. That's suicide talk. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was no difference anymore. Rowan had spent 6 months learning that being king meant sacrifice. Now he was about to find out how much sacrifice the throne could actually demand before there was nothing left to give. He turned to face her fully. If this goes wrong, don't. If this goes wrong, you need to get out. Take whoever you can and run. Don't try to save me. Don't try to fight. Just survive. You're giving me orders now? I'm asking you to live. Celine's jaw clenched. I didn't come back from the north just to watch you die heroically. I came back because some stupid part of me still believes we can fix this. Together, not with you playing martyr. Then help me survive instead of arguing. That's what I'm trying to do, you stubborn bastard. They stood there, close enough to touch but not touching. Years of history and heartbreak between them. The pendant still in Rowan's pocket. The space where her hand used to fit in his still aching. I never stopped loving you, Rowan said quietly. Even when I let go. Even when I chose the crown. I never stopped. Celine's expression cracked. Just slightly. Don't say that now. Not when you're about to walk into hell. Especially now. Because if I die today, you need to know. You need to understand that choosing the crown was the worst mistake I ever made. And if I somehow survive this, I'm spending the rest of my life proving that to you. She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped forward and kissed him. Hard, desperate, like she was trying to pour 6 months of anger and hurt and stubborn love into one moment. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Don't you dare die on me, she said. Don't you dare make me watch you get killed after saying that. I'll do my best. Your best better be enough. They left the chambers. Marcus remained locked in the dungeons, his family still missing, his betrayal still fresh. Elena sat in another cell, smiling like she knew something everyone else didn't. The palace felt like a tomb waiting to happen. Outside, the city buzzed with activity. The winter assembly drew wolves from across the empire. The arena filled slowly. Nobles in their finest, warriors in dress armor, civilians eager for spectacle, none of them knowing they were walking into a slaughter. Rowan rode through the streets with Celine beside him and 50 guards surrounding them. People cheered, threw flowers, called his name like he was some hero instead of a king who'd spent 6 months failing them. The arena loomed ahead, the same place where he'd let Celine's hand go, where he'd chosen power and lost everything. Now he was walking back into it, knowing the council planned to burn it down around him. History repeating. Except this time, he wasn't letting go. Inside, the arena was packed. 8,000 wolves in the stands, every alpha territory represented. The old stone walls that had witnessed 3 centuries of coronations now prepared to witness something darker. The throne sat at the arena's center. Not Rowan's throne from the palace. A ceremonial one. Ancient. Made from the bones of the empire's first enemies. Tradition demanded the king sit there during the assembly, present himself before his people, make himself a perfect target. Rowan walked to the throne, every instinct screaming at him to run. But he sat, placed his hands on the armrests, looked out at 8,000 faces and tried not to think about how many would die in the next hour. Celine stood 3 steps behind him, Aldrich positioned near the arena's main entrance. 500 hidden wolves scattered through the crowd, ready to respond. Not enough. Would never be enough if the council had really prepared a massacre. The ceremony began. Traditional chants, ancient words about unity and strength, and the pack's survival. Rowan had heard it all before, had sat through it as a child while his father presided. Now he was the one sitting while old men droned about tradition. He scanned the crowd, looking for threats, for council loyalists, for any sign of what was coming. Nothing. Everyone looked normal, eager, excited for ceremony. That made it worse. The waiting. The knowing something terrible was coming, but not when or how. Then Elder Matthias stepped into the arena. The old man appeared from one of the lower entrances, white robe spotless, 7 other elders following. They moved with the slow dignity of men who believed tradition protected them, or men who knew they were about to die and wanted to look good doing it. The crowd murmured, confused. The council had been declared traitors, should have been in hiding, but here they were, walking into the arena like they owned it. Rowan's hand dropped to his blade. Around the arena, his hidden forces tensed. Matthias stopped 30 feet from the throne, close enough to talk, far enough to run if needed. "Rowan Vale," the elder called. His voice carried to every corner. "You sit upon the ceremonial throne wearing a crown you have defiled through treason and conspiracy." The crowd erupted, some shouting support for Rowan, others calling for the council's arrest, chaos building. Rowan stood slowly. "I defiled nothing. You murdered my father, stole from the Northern Territories, forced choices designed to break me, and now you walk into this arena thinking tradition will protect you? Tradition is all that protects any of us, Matthias said. You have brought armed soldiers to a sacred ceremony, hidden weapons among civilians, violated every law of the assembly. To protect against your attack, Elena told me everything, the fire, the explosives, your plan to murder everyone here and blame me. Matthias smiled, cold, empty. Elena told you what we wanted her to tell you, just as Marcus betrayed you exactly when we needed him to, just as every move you've made for the past 3 months has been according to our design. Rowan felt ice slide down his spine. You're lying. Am I? You found corruption in the north exactly when we left it for you to find. You survived the regiment because we let you survive. You took the capital because we allowed it, all of it, every step, leading to this moment. Matthias spread his arms. Did you really think we'd survived 3 centuries of kings by being predictable? The arena went silent. 8,000 wolves holding their breath. Rowan's mind raced. If Matthias was telling the truth, everything had been orchestrated. Every victory false. Every decision manipulated. But that was impossible. He'd made choices, had fought, had played exactly into their hands. Why? Rowan demanded. Why go through all this? Because breaking you publicly is more valuable than killing you quietly. Your father had to die in shadows. But you? You'll fall in front of the entire empire. They'll watch their king reveal himself as a tyrant who brought weapons to sacred ceremony, who violated tradition, who chose personal vendetta over his people's safety. I chose to protect them from you. Did you? Matthias gestured at the crowd. Look around. 8,000 wolves, families, children, all here because you couldn't cancel the assembly without looking weak. All here because your pride wouldn't let you admit you'd been outmaneuvered. You brought them to their deaths, not us. Rowan wanted to argue, but couldn't, because Matthias was right. He'd known the assembly was a trap, had known civilians would die. But he'd come anyway because canceling meant losing the empire. He'd chosen power over their lives, just like he'd chosen power over Celine 6 months ago. The same mistake, different victims. The empire will know the truth, Rowan said. They'll know what you've done. The empire will know what we tell them, that their king went mad with paranoia, that he armed soldiers and started a bloodbath during sacred ceremony, that the council was forced to put him down like a rabid wolf to save everyone else. Matthias's smile widened. History is written by survivors, and you're not going to survive this. That was when the explosion started. Not fire, not from his council, from Rowan's own hidden positions. The charges his wolves had placed around the arena to defend against attack, detonating simultaneously. All of them. Someone had triggered them early. Someone had turned Rowan's own defenses into weapons against his people. The arena erupted into chaos. Stone and fire. Wolves screaming. The stands collapsing. 8,000 people caught in hell. Rowan moved without thinking. Ran toward the nearest exit, toward civilians trying to escape. Celine right beside him. Around them, his hidden soldiers revealed themselves, started helping evacuate, but the exits were blocked. Deliberately, someone had sealed them from outside. The council hadn't needed to bring weapons. They'd turned Rowan's own precautions into a massacre. He'd done exactly what they wanted. Armed the arena, positioned explosives, then they just needed to trigger them and watch him destroy everything he'd tried to protect. Through the smoke and screaming, Rowan saw Matthias still standing, still calm, like he'd known exactly what would happen. You did this, Rowan roared. Your people triggered the charges. No. Your people did. On your orders. We just convinced the right soldier that you'd gone mad, that you planned to blow the arena and blame us. So easy. So predictable. Matthias turned away. Enjoy the crown, boy. You've earned it. The elder disappeared into the chaos, his council following. Escaping through passages Rowan's wolves hadn't secured because he'd been too focused on the main arena. Outplayed. Completely. Utterly. Rowan stood in hell of his own making and understood that the council had won. They'd turned him into exactly what they'd accused him of being, a tyrant so paranoid he'd killed his own people. Rowan, Celine's voice cutting through his spiral. We need to move. Get people out. She was right. No time for rage or despair. Just survival. They fought through the chaos. pulling civilians from rubble, breaking open sealed exits. His soldiers doing the same. Aldrich appeared, covered in dust and blood, helping carry wounded. The casualties were catastrophic, bodies everywhere, children crushed, families torn apart. The sacred arena turned into a tomb, and every death would be blamed on Rowan. They worked for hours, pulled survivors, counted dead. By the time the smoke cleared, 2,000 wolves had died. Another 1,000 injured, the worst disaster in the Empire's history. And Rowan Vale was responsible. News spread through the capital like fire. The king had brought weapons to sacred ceremony. His soldiers had detonated charges, had murdered thousands. The council had barely escaped. We're calling for his immediate removal. Rowan stood in the ruined arena, surrounded by death, and felt something inside him break. Not his resolve, something deeper. The part of him that had believed power could be used for good, that kings could be different, that the crown meant something beyond just the weight it carried. Celine found him standing there as the sun set. Her armor cracked, face haunted. She'd pulled dozens of people from rubble, watched dozens more die. "It's over," she said quietly. "The other alphas are calling emergency council. They're going to remove you, probably execute you." "Good." She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "Don't you dare give up. Don't you dare let them win. They already won. I killed 2,000 people trying to stop them. You were trying to protect them. Doesn't matter. They're still dead, and everyone thinks I did it deliberately." Rowan pulled away. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm exactly what the council said. A tyrant who destroyed everything because he couldn't admit he'd lost. Stop it. I chose the crown over you, chose power over love, chose pride over people's lives. How many times do I have to make the same mistake before I admit what I am?" Celine slapped him, hard, the crack echoing across empty stone. "You're a king who got outmaneuvered by men who've been playing this game for centuries. You're a fighter who walked into a trap trying to save people. You're an idiot who keeps sacrificing himself instead of accepting help." She grabbed his armor. "But you're not a tyrant, and you're not done fighting." "What's left to fight for? I've lost the Empire, lost the people's trust, lost everything." "You haven't lost me." Those words hit harder than the slap. Rowan stared at her, at this woman he'd broken, who'd rebuilt herself, who'd come back and fought beside him and refused to let him quit even when quitting was the smart choice. "Why?" he asked. "After everything I've done, everything I've destroyed, why are you still here?" "Because someone has to keep you alive long enough to fix your mistakes, and because I'm apparently too stubborn to give up on you." She released him. "The other alphas meet tonight. They're going to demand your crown, probably your head. You have maybe 6 hours before they come for you. Let them come. Or we run. Get ahead of them. Disappear into the territories. Live to fight another day." Rowan looked at the ruined arena, at the bloodstains that would never wash clean, at the future he'd destroyed trying to build something better. Running meant the council won, meant 2,000 people died for nothing, meant every choice he'd made since that night 6 months ago had been pointless. But staying meant execution, meant dying while the council reshaped the Empire into whatever nightmare they wanted. "There's a third option," Rowan said slowly. "What?" "I go to the Alpha meeting, face them directly, tell them everything, show them the proof of what the council's done. Let them decide. They'll kill you on sight. Maybe, but at least they'll hear the truth first." Rowan straightened. "I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. The council wants me to look like a tyrant? Fine. I'll face judgment like a king. Let the alphas decide if I deserve the crown or the blade." Celine stared at him. "That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard." "Probably. You'll die." "Maybe. Definitely." "Then come with me. Keep me alive long enough to tell the truth. That's all I'm asking. Just a chance to speak before they execute me." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine. But when this goes sideways, I'm going to resurrect you just to kill you myself." Fair. They had 6 hours. Rowan spent them gathering every piece of evidence he had, every shipping record, every payment ledger, every testimony about the council's crimes, built a case that couldn't be denied, that showed decades of corruption. Aldrich joined them. So did some of the northern wolves who'd fought beside Rowan. 50 warriors total. Not enough to fight the Empire, but enough to get Rowan into the meeting alive. As night fell, they rode toward the great hall where the Alpha Council gathered. Every major territory represented, every powerful family, the men and women who actually controlled the empire beneath the ceremony of kings. The hall was surrounded. Hundreds of soldiers, guards from every territory, all ready to cut Rowan down the moment he appeared. He rode forward anyway, crown on his head, evidence in his hands, Selene at his side, Aldrich behind him. 50 wolves willing to die for a king who'd already lost everything. The guards blocked their path, weapons drawn, ready. "I'm here to address the council," Rowan said, his voice carrying, calm. "I have evidence, testimony, proof of what the elders have done. Give me 1 hour. Let me speak. Then you can execute me if you want." The guards hesitated, looked to their commanders, waited for orders. Then the hall's doors opened, the Alphas emerging. 30 of them, the most powerful wolves in the empire, men and women who'd built their territories through strength and cunning. At their head was Alpha Cain, Southern Territories, one of the oldest bloodlines. He'd known Rowan's father, had fought beside him. "Rowan Vale," Cain called. "You stand accused of mass murder, of violating sacred ceremony, of bringing weapons to the Winter Assembly and detonating them among civilians. I know what I'm accused of. I'm here to show you the truth. The truth is written in blood across that arena, 2,000 dead, your soldiers holding the triggers. My soldiers were manipulated, set up by the council, just like I was." Rowan held up the documents. "I have proof, years of corruption, theft, murder, everything the council's done to control this empire. Give me 1 hour to present it, then judge me." The Alphas conferred, low voices, argument. Finally, Cain stepped forward. 1 hour, in chains, surrounded by our guards. You speak your piece, then we vote on whether you live or die. Agreed. They moved inside. Rowan's wrists bound, Selene forced to stay outside with Aldrich and the others. Just Rowan. 30 Alphas, and 200 guards ready to kill him. The hall was ancient, built from the bones of the empire's founding. Every Alpha King had stood here, made their case. Some had walked out, some had died on this floor. Rowan suspected he knew which category he'd fall into. He stood at the center, the Alphas arrayed in a circle, judging, waiting. "Speak," Cain commanded. So Rowan spoke, told them everything, about the North, the stolen supplies, the documents proving the council's theft, his father's murder, Elena's betrayal, Marcus's impossible choice, the trap at the arena designed to make him look like a tyrant. He laid it all out, every piece, every connection, built the case systematically, showed them 3 decades of corruption hidden behind tradition and ceremony. The Alphas listened, some skeptical, some angry, none interrupting. When he finished, silence filled the hall. Then Elder Matthias entered. The old man walked in surrounded by his own guards. 30 soldiers in council colors. He moved with the same calm dignity, the same absolute certainty. "Everything you've heard is lies," Matthias said. "Manufactured evidence by a desperate tyrant. Rowan Vale discovered his own corruption, and rather than face justice, he's attempting to destroy the council that would hold him accountable." "The documents," Rowan started, "can be forged, have been forged, by your own agents to create false justification for your attempted coup." Matthias looked at the Alphas. He brought weapons to sacred ceremony. His soldiers triggered explosives that killed thousands. These are facts. Everything else is smoke designed to hide his crimes. "Then explain the Northern Territories," Alpha Cain said. "Explain the starvation, the missing supplies, mismanagement, which we were investigating, which Rowan discovered and tried to cover up by blaming us." Matthias smiled. "He's a broken king, paranoid, unstable. He chose power over love 6 months ago and it destroyed him from inside. Now he's trying to take the empire with him." The accusation landed. Rowan could see it in the Alphas' faces. The doubt, the uncertainty. "You forced that choice," Rowan said. "You manipulated everything to break me. We simply enforced tradition. You made your choice freely, and every disaster since has been consequence of that choice." Matthias turned to the Alphas. "Kill him, now, before he destroys what's left of this empire." The guards moved forward, weapons rising. Rowan stood in the center with his hands bound and nowhere to run. This was it, the end. After 6 months of fighting, of trying to fix his mistake, of attempting to build something better than the empire his father left, he was going to die in chains while the council won. Then the doors exploded inward. Celine crashed through, leading 200 northern wolves, Aldrich beside her. Behind them, civilians, families from the north who'd survived the council's theft, witnesses who'd watched their children starve while the elders got rich. "You want proof?" Celine shouted. "Here's your proof. 200 wolves who watched the council steal everything, who lost family, who know exactly what these bastards have done." The hall erupted into chaos. Matthias's guards moved to intercept. The alphas shouted for order. Rowan's bonds shattered as northern wolves freed him. And in the center of it all, Elder Matthias finally lost his calm, his mask cracking, revealing the desperate old man beneath. "Kill them!" he screamed. "Kill them all!" The council's guards attacked, met by Celine's warriors. The great hall turning into a battlefield, alphas scrambling for cover, ancient stone walls witnessing violence they hadn't seen in centuries. Rowan grabbed a fallen blade, moved toward Matthias through the chaos. The elder backed away, surrounded by the last of his guards. "It's over," Rowan said. "Everyone sees what you are now. You've proven nothing except that you're willing to destroy sacred space to protect your lies. Then let them judge." Rowan gestured at the alphas, at the witnesses, at everyone watching 2 centuries of tradition and corruption finally collide. "Let every alpha hear testimony, see evidence, decide who's lying." He raised his voice. "I challenge the council. Here, now. Let the pack decide who deserves to rule." The ancient words, the oldest law, challenge, trial by witness and vote, binding, absolute. The fighting stopped, even the guards lowering weapons, because challenge couldn't be refused, not in the Great Hall, not in front of every alpha. Matthias's face went white. "You can't—" "I just did. Face judgment or admit you're afraid of the truth." The elder looked around, at the alphas waiting, at the witnesses ready to speak, at the evidence spread across ancient stone. He'd won every battle until now, manipulated everything perfectly, but he'd never prepared for someone to force direct confrontation in front of the Empire's power structure. "Fine," Matthias said. "Let them judge. Let them hear everything. Then watch them execute you for destroying the assembly. We'll see." The trial began. Hours of testimony. Witnesses from the north describing starvation. Nobles producing records of payments. Elena brought from her cell to describe the council's manipulation. Marcus testifying about the threats against his family. The alphas listened to everything, asked questions, demanded proof, functioning exactly as they should, as judge and jury for the Empire's future. Dawn light filtered through the hall's windows by the time they finished. Rowan stood exhausted, bleeding from where fights had caught him, crown long since fallen, just a wolf facing judgment. The alphas conferred, voted, reached decision. Alpha Cain stood. "We find evidence of corruption within the council, theft, manipulation, conspiracy. These crimes are proven." Matthias smiled. But we also find Rowan Vale guilty of bringing weapons to sacred ceremony, of violating the assembly's sanctity, of decisions that led to 2,000 deaths." The hall went silent, both sides guilty, both sides condemned. "The council is hereby dissolved," Cain continued. "Its members will face individual trials, its power stripped. Never again will 7 elders control the throne." Matthias's face went gray. "You can't—" "We just did. As for Rowan Vale," Cain looked at him, "you will stand trial for the assembly massacre. Present your defense. Let the Empire decide if a king who makes catastrophic mistakes deserves the crown or the blade. Not execution, not absolution, just more judgment, more trials, more fighting." But the council was broken. Finally. Completely. Rowan looked at Celine, at Aldrich, at the northern wolves who'd risked everything to testify. They'd won, not cleanly, not completely, but they'd shattered the council's power, exposed 3 centuries of corruption, forced the Empire to actually look at what it had become. Elder Matthias stood shaking, his power gone, his certainty shattered, looking suddenly old and brittle and terrified. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Rowan replied. "You just haven't accepted it yet." Guards took the elders away. All 7. bound in chains they'd once used to control kings, dragged towards cells where they'd await judgment. Matthias looked back once, met Rowan's eyes. You think you've won, but winning just means you inherit all the impossible choices we made, all the blood, all the compromises. The crown doesn't change, just the fool wearing it. Then he was gone. The council finally ended. The hall emptied slowly. Alphas departing. Witnesses leaving. The ancient space returning to silence. Only Celine remained, standing in morning light, looking at Rowan with an expression caught between exhaustion and something softer. You survived, she said. Barely. That's still surviving. Rowan moved toward her, every muscle screaming, every wound aching. I have to stand trial for the assembly. Might still die. Probably. You should go. Get clear of this. Start over somewhere safe. Is that what you want? I want you alive and away from the mess I've made. Celine stepped closer. Too bad. I didn't fight this hard to keep you breathing just to leave now. We see this through, together, until they execute you or crown you or whatever the hell the Empire decides. That could take months. Then I'll be here months. Why? She took his face in her hands. Because 6 months ago you made the worst choice of your life and I hated you for it. But watching you fight the council, watching you risk everything to fix what you'd broken, that meant something. Showed me the man I fell for was still in there. Buried under crown and duty, but still there. I got 2,000 people killed. You tried to save them and got manipulated by experts. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, intent. You went into that arena trying to protect people. The council went in planning murder. The result was hell, but the intent matters. She leaned her forehead against his. You're not a tyrant. You're just a king learning that power is heavier than anyone tells you before you take it. Rowan closed his eyes, felt her warmth, her presence, the thing he'd lost 6 months ago slowly finding its way back. I don't deserve you, he said. No, you don't. But I'm here anyway, being stupid. Staying with a king who'll probably get executed for crimes he didn't commit. Smart. Shut up and accept that I'm not leaving. So he did. They stood there as dawn filled the ancient hall. 2 scarred wolves who'd survived betrayal and blood and impossible choices. Who'd lost everything and fought to get some of it back. Outside, the Empire waited. Judgment coming. Trials ahead. The whole world ready to decide if Rowan Vale deserved the crown he'd sacrificed everything to keep. But in this moment, in the quiet after the storm, he had Celine beside him, had broken the council that destroyed his father, had exposed corruption and faced the consequences. It wasn't victory. Not yet. Maybe never. But it was something, and sometimes something was enough. For now. The trial lasted 3 months. 3 months of testimony. Witnesses. Evidence. Every decision Rowan had made dissected in front of the Empire. Every mistake laid bare. The Alphas demanding answers for 2,000 dead. For the Assembly massacre. For bringing weapons to sacred ground. Rowan stood before them day after day. No crown, just a king answering for catastrophic failure. He didn't hide. Didn't make excuses. Just told the truth. That he'd been manipulated. That he'd tried to protect people and failed. That good intentions didn't erase bodies. Some Alphas called for execution, others for exile. A few argued he'd been set up, that the council bore the real guilt. The Empire fractured along lines of judgment and mercy. Through it all, Celine stayed. Sat in the gallery every day. Never spoke, never looked away. Just present. A constant reminder that some things survived even when everything else burned. Marcus remained imprisoned, his family still missing despite every search. The Beta had testified at Rowan's trial, admitted his betrayal, explained the impossible choice. Some understood. Most just saw a traitor. Either way, he'd likely die in that cell. The council elders faced their own trials. Matthias and the others charged with decades of theft, corruption, conspiracy to murder. The evidence overwhelming. But trials moved slowly when powerful men fell. Lawyers. Delays, procedure designed to protect the system even when the system was rotten. On the 93rd day, the Alphas reached verdict. Alpha Cain stood before the assembled court, every territory represented, and delivered judgment that would reshape the Empire. Rowan stood in the center of the Great Hall, hands unbound this time, waiting to hear if he'd live or die. The hall was packed, thousands watching, the same hungry crowd that had filled the arena 6 months ago, always eager for spectacle, for blood. For the moment a king fell, Cain's voice carried to every corner. The same acoustics that had witnessed centuries of judgment now prepared to witness one more. We find Rowan Vale guilty of catastrophic failure of leadership, of decisions that led directly to the Assembly massacre, of bringing weapons to sacred ceremony in violation of ancient law. The crowd roared, some celebration, some outrage. Rowan stood silent, accepting the words, accepting responsibility for every death, every mistake, the weight of it crushing but deserved. However, Cain continued, and the hall went quiet. We also find evidence of systematic manipulation by the council, of conspiracy designed specifically to engineer Rowan Vale's destruction, of decades of corruption that poisoned the throne itself. Rowan's heart hammered. This was the moment, live or die, crown or blade. Therefore we render the following judgment. Cain looked directly at Rowan. Rowan Vale will be stripped of absolute authority. The throne will no longer hold supreme power. Instead, a council of alphas will govern alongside the king. Decisions made jointly. Power shared. No single wolf will ever again control the empire completely. Not execution, not exile, but not vindication either. The crown reduced, the throne diminished. Rowan would remain king in name, but never in the absolute sense his father had been. Furthermore, Cain continued, Rowan Vale will personally oversee reparations to every family affected by the Assembly massacre. We'll spend the next decade rebuilding what was destroyed. We'll prove through action whether a king who fails catastrophically deserves a second chance. The judgment landed. Not mercy, not punishment. Something harder. The burden of living with failure while trying to fix it. Of carrying the weight every day while working to earn redemption that might never come. Rowan met Cain's eyes. Saw no sympathy there. Just cold calculation. The alphas had found a solution that satisfied no one but addressed everything. They'd broken the throne's absolute power while giving Rowan a chance to prove he was more than his worst choice. Do you accept these terms? Cain asked. Rowan could refuse, could demand execution instead, could argue for exile. But that would just be running again, choosing the easy path instead of the hard one. He'd spent 6 months learning what power actually cost. Now he was learning what accountability meant. I accept. The hall erupted, some cheering, some protesting, most just exhausted by 3 months of trial and ready for any ending. Guards released Rowan officially. No longer a prisoner, no longer a king in the old sense. Something new, something undefined, a position that would be shaped by what he did next. Celine found him outside the hall. She looked as tired as he felt. 3 months of sitting through testimony, of hearing every failure dissected, of watching him stand before the empire and accept responsibility. So, she said, king, but not really king. Sounds about right. You going to accept it? Actually do the work? Or are you going to run? Rowan looked at her, really looked. She'd stayed through everything. The trial, the judgment, the reduction of everything he'd sacrificed so much to gain. She'd watched him lose the absolute power he'd chosen over her and hadn't left. I'm gonna stay, fix what I broke, spend however long it takes making reparations to families I failed. That could take the rest of your life. Probably. And you're okay with that? He considered. Was he okay with spending decades atoning for one catastrophic mistake? With being the king who'd be forever remembered for the Assembly massacre? With never escaping the weight of those deaths? No. But I'm going to do it anyway. Because running means those people died for nothing. Staying means maybe I can build something that justifies them giving me a second chance I don't deserve. Celine studied him with those green eyes. Something shifted in her expression. Some final wall coming down. You've changed, she said quietly. I got 2,000 people killed. Change was pretty mandatory. That's not what I mean. 6 months ago you chose the crown because you thought power mattered more than anything. Now you're accepting a diminished throne and decades of hard work with no glory. That's different. Rowan pulled the silver pendant from his pocket, the one she'd torn off and left behind. He'd carried it every day since, through battles, through trials, through every moment of the past 9 months. I learned something, he said. Power doesn't mean anything if you're alone when you use it. The crown felt like winning until I realized I'd lost the only person who mattered to get it. He held out the pendant, offered it back to her. I can't undo what I did in that arena. Can't take back letting your hand go, but I can spend the rest of my life proving that I learned from it, that I'm not the same terrified kid who thought duty meant sacrifice instead of partnership. Celine looked at the pendant, at him, her expression unreadable. You think giving me back jewelry fixes 6 months of heartbreak? No. Nothing fixes that. But maybe it's a start. Maybe over the next decade while I'm working to rebuild, you could decide if the man I'm becoming is worth forgiving for what the boy I was did to you. That's a long time to wait for forgiveness. I've got nothing but time. And you're worth waiting for. Celine took the pendant, turned it over in her hands. The chain still broken where she'd snapped it. She made no move to put it on. I'm not promising anything, she said finally. I know, but I'm not leaving either. Because I want to see if you actually do the work. If you actually become the king you should have been instead of the one the council tried to make you. That's fair. And because some stupid part of me still believes we could have been something amazing if you hadn't chosen wrong that night. We could still be something. Different than before. Harder earned. But something. She looked at him. Then nodded slowly. Maybe. Ask me in 10 years when you've actually proven you meant all this. I will. They stood there in afternoon light. Two scarred wolves who'd survived more than most people faced in lifetimes. Not fixed, not healed, but present, together, working towards something neither could fully see yet. The next weeks blurred together. Rowan dissolved the old council formally, established the new system, Council of Alphas meeting quarterly, decisions made jointly, no single throne holding absolute power. He moved the capital's focus to reparations, visiting every family who'd lost someone in the assembly, listening to their rage, their grief, their demands for justice, taking it all, absorbing it, learning every name, every face, every person his failure had destroyed. Some families forgave him. Most didn't. All of them took the reparations because they needed to survive, and principals didn't feed children or rebuild homes. Rowan met with Duke Aldrich to discuss the Northern Territories. The old wolf had returned to his lands but stayed in contact. Advised, pushed, kept Rowan honest when exhaustion made compromise tempting. We're rebuilding the supply lines, Aldrich reported during one meeting, but trust is gone. The Northern clans remember decades of theft. Your reparations help, but they're not enough. What else do they need? Presence. You sitting in the capital issuing orders isn't the same as you being there, working alongside them, showing them you actually care. So Rowan went north, spent months in the mining territories, worked the mines himself, hauled ore, rebuilt infrastructure, slept in the same rough barracks as workers. No crown, no ceremony, just labor and presence and the slow grinding work of rebuilding trust. Celine came with him, not as his partner, not yet, but as someone who'd chosen to stay, who worked beside him, who kept him alive when exhaustion made him careless. They didn't talk about the arena, about the pendant still in her pocket, about the future they might or might not build. Just worked, day after day, side by side, learning each other again from the ground up. One night, 6 months after the trial, they sat by a fire outside the mining compound, both exhausted, both covered in dust and sweat, the kind of bone-deep tired that came from honest work. You ever regret it? Celine asked suddenly. Giving up absolute power? Becoming this version of king? Rowan considered. Did he regret losing the throne's absolute authority? The ability to make decisions without consultation? The power his father had wielded? Every day, he admitted. Because absolute power meant I could move fast, fix things immediately. But then I remember that same power is what the council used to steal from people for decades. What let them control kings? What corrupted everything? So you think weakness is better? I think accountability is better. Having to explain decisions, having to build consensus. It's slower, harder, but it means no single wolf can destroy everything when they make mistakes. Like you did, like I did. Rowan looked at her, the firelight catching her face. She looked different than she had in the arena 9 months ago. Harder, more weathered, but also more present, more real. You've stayed, he said, through all of it, the trial, The judgment. 6 months of watching me haul ore and grovel to northern clans. Why? I told you. I want to see if you actually do the work. That's not the whole reason. Celine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard in months. Because watching you choose the crown broke something in me. Made me realize I'd built my whole sense of worth around being the person you loved. When you let go, it felt like I stopped mattering. You always mattered. Not to myself. Not until I had to rebuild without you. Had to figure out who Celine Ashford was when she wasn't defined by being loved by Rowan Vale. She turned to face him fully. These past 9 months, watching you lose everything and keep fighting anyway. Watching you accept judgment and reparations and diminishment without running. That taught me something. That maybe we both needed to break completely before we could figure out who we actually were. Separate from each other. Separate from what we thought we had to be. And now I'm still figuring it out. But I'm doing it here. With you. Because broken or not, diminished or not, you're still the wolf I fell for. You're just buried under better priorities now. Rowan reached out slowly, took her hand. She didn't pull away. I don't deserve you, he said. No, you don't. But maybe over the next decade, I'll decide you've earned me anyway. I can live with that. They sat like that until the fire died. Hands linked, not fixed, not whole, but together. Building something new from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. A year passed. Then 2. Rowan worked the territories, met with the Alpha Council, made decisions jointly, learned that governing through consensus was harder than absolute rule but more stable. The empire shifted, slowly, painfully, old power structures breaking, new ones forming. The council elders finally faced execution. All 7, Matthias last. The old man stood on the scaffold, looking ancient and bitter, and still utterly certain he'd been right about everything. Rowan attended the execution, owed them that much, watching the men who'd destroyed his father and nearly destroyed him face final judgment. Before the blade fell, Matthias looked at Rowan. Any last words? The executioner asked. The elder smiled. Thin, mean. You think you've won, but you're just the next version of what we were. Give it 20 years. 30. You'll be making the same choices, the same compromises. Power doesn't change, just the fool who thinks he can control it. Then his head fell, and the council's era ended completely. Rowan stood there afterward, wondering if Matthias had been right, if in 30 years he'd be the corrupt old man on a scaffold while some younger king watched. If power really did corrupt everyone eventually. Celine found him later, staring at the empty scaffold. Thinking about becoming him, she asked. Wondering if I'm already on that path. You're not. How do you know? Because he never questioned himself, never doubted, never stood in front of the empire and admitted he'd failed catastrophically. You did. That's the difference. Rowan looked at her. 3 years since the arena, 3 years of working beside her, of slowly rebuilding trust, of learning who they were separately before trying to be anything together. The pendant had stayed in her pocket all that time, unrepaired, unresolved. I love you, he said. No different than 3 years ago, no less. Just wanted you to know. I know, and I'm still deciding if that's enough. If love matters when you've proven you'll choose other things over it when pressed. That hurt. But Rowan accepted it. Because she was right. He had chosen wrong. Had proven that love could be sacrificed for power. And words didn't erase that. Fair enough, he said. Let me know when you decide. 5 years after the Assembly Massacre, the Northern Territories held a ceremony, celebrating Reconstruction, 5 years of work, of rebuilt mines and restored trade routes, of trust slowly, painfully earned. They invited Rowan as guest, not as supreme king, as the alpha who'd worked alongside them, who'd hauled ore and slept in barracks and treated them like equals instead of subjects. He attended. Celine with him. They'd been partners for 5 years now, working together, living separate but adjacent, building something that looked like friendship with echoes of what they'd been. The ceremony was simple. Northern wolves recognizing the work done, the lives rebuilt, no glory, no grand speeches, just acknowledgement of collective effort. Afterward, an old woman approached Rowan, the same one who'd grabbed his arm 5 years ago, begged him to stop the council's theft. You did it, she said. Took 5 years, but you actually fixed it. We're not done. Still years of work left. But we're not starving anymore. Our children have food. That's enough for now. She studied him with eyes that had seen too much loss. You're different than your father. How? He saw the problems but tried to fix them alone. Thought being king meant shouldering everything himself. You learned to share the weight. That's harder. Better. She left. Rowan stood there processing. His father had died trying to fight the council alone. Had kept his investigation secret. Had thought being strong meant never asking for help. Rowan had almost made the same mistake. Had charged into the north alone. Had tried to bear the crown's weight solo. Had chosen power over partnership. The Assembly Massacre had taught him that strength wasn't carrying everything yourself. It was knowing when to share the burden, when to admit you couldn't do it alone. That night, by another fire outside another mining compound, Celine pulled the pendant from her pocket. It was worn now, tarnished from 5 years of being carried, the chain still broken. She held it out to him. "Fix it," she said. Rowan took it carefully. "What changed? I spent 5 years watching you work. Watching you listen, watching you accept help instead of trying to be some lone hero king." She met his eyes. "You're not the same person who let my hand go in that arena. You're someone who learned from it, who became better because of the failure instead of bitter. So you've decided that you've earned another chance, not forgiveness, not forgetting, but a chance to build something new, something better than what we had before." Rowan looked at the pendant, at the broken chain, at 5 years of her carrying it despite everything. "I don't have tools to fix it here." "I know." She took it back, pulled a new chain from her pocket. "Different style, stronger. I bought this last week. Figured if I was giving you another chance, we should start fresh." New chain, same moon. She threaded the pendant onto the new chain, put it around her neck. It settled against her throat, right where it had been 6 years ago before everything broke. "This doesn't mean we're fixed," she said. "Doesn't mean I've forgotten what you did. Just means I'm willing to see if we can build something better from the ruins. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But I'm tired of punishing both of us for one mistake, even if it was catastrophic." She touched the pendant. "So here's the deal. We try again, slowly, carefully, with the understanding that if you ever choose power over me again, I'm gone. No second chances after this. Fair. And you accept that I'm not who I was 6 years ago. I'm harder, more careful, less willing to trust blindly. You want me, you get the scarred version. The scarred version is the one I fell in love with. The one before was just potential." Celine smiled. First real smile he'd seen in years. "Good answer." They moved closer, slowly. Testing, then kissed. Tentative at first, then deeper. 5 years of distance closing. Not fixed, not healed completely, but together. Finally. Actually. When they pulled apart, Celine rested her forehead against his. "If we do this, we do it differently," she said. "Not me orbiting around your throne, not you choosing duty over us, partnership, equals, or nothing." "Partnership," Rowan agreed. "I'm done trying to carry the crown alone, done thinking I have to choose between power and love. They either work together or neither one matters." They sat by the fire until dawn, planning, talking, slowly rebuilding what the arena had destroyed. Different than before, harder won, but real in a way the first version had never been. 10 years after the Assembly Massacre, the Empire held another ceremony at the rebuilt arena. Memorial for those who'd died. Rededication of sacred space. Acknowledgement that catastrophic failure could lead to rebuilding if you did the work. 10,000 wolves attended. The same number who'd been there that terrible day. Families of victims, survivors, witnesses. Rowan stood at the center, not on the throne, just another alpha. Celine beside him. Not behind, not ahead. Beside. Where she belonged. He didn't give speeches, didn't make grand proclamations. Just stood while families spoke, while survivors testified. While the Empire acknowledged pain and loss and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding. The crown sat in a museum now. A relic. Symbol of the old system. Rowan wore a simple circlet during official functions. No ceremony, no weight. Just metal marking position without claiming absolute power. Marcus had been released after 5 years. His family found. Reunited. The beta hadn't returned to Rowan's service. had moved to the Western Territories, trying to rebuild his own life away from the mistakes that had defined him. They'd spoken once, brief, painful, Marcus apologizing, Rowan accepting, both understanding that some betrayals created distance that time couldn't fully close. But they'd parted without hate, just acknowledgement of impossible choices and consequences that never stopped landing. Elena had died in prison 3 years in. Throat cut. Prison justice from someone who'd lost family to the council. Rowan had attended the funeral. One person there. No ceremony. Just acknowledgement that she'd been human despite everything. Had made choices. Had consequences. Had died for them. After the memorial ceremony, Rowan and Celine walked to the arena's perimeter. 10 years of work behind them. Decades more ahead. The empire stable but not fixed. Better but not healed. Progress measured in inches instead of miles. Think we'll ever actually finish? Celine asked. Ever reach a point where we can say it's done? Rowan considered. 10 years had taught him that nothing was ever finished. That empires required constant work. That the moment you stopped pushing forward was the moment decay started. No, he said. But I think that's the point. It's not supposed to be finished. It's supposed to be constantly rebuilt, constantly questioned, constantly improved. That sounds exhausting. It is. But it's better than the alternative. Better than assuming we've reached perfection and stopping. They reached the spot where Rowan had stood 10 years ago, where he'd let her hand go, where he'd chosen wrong and paid for it in blood and years and relationships broken. Celine stopped, looked at the stone beneath their feet. 10 years ago, you made the worst choice of your life here. Yeah. Want to make a better one now? She held out her hand. Palm up. Open. Offering. Rowan took it, laced their fingers together. Held on. Not letting go this time, he said. Good. Because I'd kill you if you tried. They stood there while the memorial crowd dispersed, while families left, while the arena slowly emptied. Two wolves who'd survived catastrophe, who'd rebuilt separately before rebuilding together, who'd learned that strength wasn't power, it was partnership, accountability, the willingness to admit failure and work decades to fix it. The empire would never be perfect. The throne would always carry weight. Decisions would still lead to consequences. But they'd face it together, share the burden, build something better than what came before. Not because they were fixed, not because they'd found some perfect solution, but because they'd learned that surviving wasn't the same as winning, that sometimes the best you could do was keep working, keep trying, keep showing up day after day to rebuild what had been destroyed. Rowan looked at Celine, at the pendant around her neck, at 10 years of work reflected in her eyes. I love you, he said. Same as I did 10 years ago, same as I will 10 years from now. Just wanted you to know. She squeezed his hand. I know. And for the record, I love you too. Even after everything. Maybe because of everything. Because you became someone worth loving instead of just someone I loved out of habit. That's the nicest and meanest thing you've ever said to me. I contain multitudes. They left the arena together, hand in hand, heading toward whatever came next. More work, more rebuilding, more consequences from decisions made and mistakes survived. But together. Finally. Completely. The crown had cost everything 10 years ago, had demanded sacrifice, had broken them both. But in breaking, they'd learned what actually mattered. Not power, not throne, not the weight of tradition or the glory of absolute rule. Just this. Two people choosing each other, day after day. Through catastrophe and reconstruction, through failure and slow redemption. Rowan had been wrong about many things, had made catastrophic choices, had let fear and duty corrupt love into sacrifice. But he'd learned, had spent 10 years proving that failure could be the beginning instead of the end, that the worst choice of your life could teach you how to make better ones, that sometimes you had to lose everything to understand what actually mattered. The empire stretched around them, imperfect, scarred, rebuilding, just like them, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Not victory, not redemption, not absolution for 2,000 deaths that would haunt him forever, just enough. To keep going, to keep trying, to keep building something better from the ruins of what had burned. Together. Always together. Because the greatest kings weren't remembered for the crowns they kept. They were remembered for learning when to set the crown down and pick up their partner's hand instead. Rowan had learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but he'd learned it, and that would have to be enough. For now. For always. For whatever came next.